Hello and welcome to the BNB Show. My name is Brandon Kane, and my cohort over here. Let me get the right side over here. This my guy over here is Brendan Nelson, Seahawks. Brendan Nelson back in the house here at the Hawks Nest. How we doing today, my guy?
Better every week. Apparently, they keep winning, and I keep doing better.
Keep stacking up those dubs. Another good one from our Seattle Seahawks. This last game on the road against the Jets, slightly reinforcing a bit of their grip, Brendan, on the division, and maybe kind of rounding into shape fully as a team here. We'll see as we get down the home stretch of this. But as I always like to ask you on this, as we do come out with the win, what are some big picture takeaways coming out of this loss with the Jets from your perspective?
I think that it's hard to take a lot from that game because so much stuff happened in that game that was very fluky, very random, very things that you don't expect to happen very often. Like, it will probably be decades before we see another game where one team's special teams are that bad. Like, our special teams were such a disaster in that game that, yeah, I do think you're going to have to hold some people accountable for it, and we already have in the case of Chenault. He's just gone. But at the same time, it's hard to imagine ever being anywhere close to being that bad again. I've been watching football for a long time. I don't know if I've ever seen a Seahawks game where the Seahawks special teams were that much of a disaster. I've seen games where we've missed like 3 field goals. I've seen games where we've had fumbles on special teams, but for it all to come together like that in one game was something else. And because of that, I do kind of want to pull back a little bit on reaching any grand conclusions from this game, but I think we can very safely say this defense is, we kind of knew it was for real after the Cardinals game, I think, but this game affirms it. They had every excuse to just wilt and fall apart in that game because they were getting set up to fail so badly, and they didn't let it happen. Other than really that one drive, the 80-yard drive, which only happened because of a very accidental face mask anyway. They didn't really let up anything, and I'm definitely taking that to the bank because this defense has been so good for an extended period of time now that I feel like that we can ride that a good distance the rest of the season. So that's my main takeaway right now.
Considering where the special teams unit has been for where they've been problematic, obviously Dixon and Myers have been doing their job plenty fine. We're good. We're happy with them. But my outlook on this has been a little bit of let's mitigate this a little bit. Let's build into this. Like, we have an ideal when you start a season, and then you have a place that you've reached on a positional unit or a certain part of that positional unit 3/4 into the season. And what I mean by this, Brendan, is I think that we haven't had necessarily a horrible time in defending kick returns. It's been all right. But I would say at this point that you really got to understand that special teams units cost you in a few of these games with some of these major mistakes, and that at least from a kick return to a kicking off, I would be just lacing it into the end zone, and I would let the ball roll into the back of the end zone for the rest of the year from my perspective, unless I absolutely had no choice from the returning angle of it. Would you find yourself in the same place, or do you still have to, do you feel like, take advantage of that side of the that part of the game and use that to the utmost?
Yeah, I don't think you have much of a choice at this point. I think you got to just go with it. I think you just got to roll with it. I think you got to boot it into the end zone as many times as you can. I think that's just kind of common sense at this point. And I think you got to make sure whoever is going to be returning kicks from here on out, they understand that if you're in the end zone, you don't take it out ever. Yeah. Like, we just need to be starting with the ball at the 20 or 30. There's nothing wrong with starting with the ball at the 30. Like, that's actually, I think people don't understand how big an advantage it is to be like two decent plays away from field goal range at the start of a drive. And a lot of these kick returners think, no, I can do better than that, when 90% of the time they can't.
90% of the time they can't. That's the thing. It's like they think they're returning it well, but you end up at like the 24-yard line or something like that, and you've risked all that for the negative 6-yard gain you get on the offshoot.
Yeah, and even when you do get a good return, a lot of the time it comes back on a penalty, right? Like, that's a decent chunk of it as well. So I think you got to do some things there. Obviously, you're not going to do anything right now because we got 5 games left. I do kind of feel like Harbaugh's probably going to be gone at the end of the year. I think that the special teams have been below average throughout the season. And then that game, I think, is going to stick in people's minds. but we got to roll with it for right now. And who knows? Maybe things will get better by the end of the year to where that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But remember, Harbaugh was one of the hires that we made that a lot of people, including myself, kind of scratched their head about because he came from Michigan last year, and special teams was one area where Michigan was not really good. I remember the special teams almost cost them the playoff game against Alabama, if you remember.
I do.
So I don't think he's going to be here next year at this point, and I'm down with it. But there are things you can do in the meantime to mitigate that factor. And I think it's just a simple matter of telling these guys, hey, take a knee, hey, boot it through the end zone. I'm sure Myers can do it. I'm sure Myers has the leg to do it pretty much every time. But yeah, I'm pretty good to go with that.
Yeah, I just think you can't have them sinking any more games. And like you did say, this was the worst I've seen in my history of watching Seahawks games. I've never seen a special teams performance that did that much to cause you to lose the game. Like you say, there are missed kicks. You have kickers that completely go into their implode on themselves in a game where they get in their head, they get the yips. But not like this, where it affects so much of all of the special teams unit across the board throughout the whole, almost all the day. Actually, most of it was just a half, just about it all happened in. But it was a brutal turn of the screw on this one. Is Leonard Williams making some noise? I feel like he's going to start making some noise here to be a defensive player of the year candidate if he can continue. I don't think he's been asked to necessarily be at this blistering pace the past 2 games, Brendan, but if he can stay up, kind of around this area down the home stretch, he might really make some noise, might he, on the defensive player of the year standing. I know it's hard to get West Coast Seattle players awards. We've talked about it many times over, but just on merit alone.
Yeah, I was looking at this earlier this week. He should be first team All-Pro. That much I do know because it's him. Well, the best interior defensive lineman's Dexter Lawrence, right? Clearly it's Dexter Lawrence, but he got hurt, by the way. He's not going to play again this year. So he's probably done. And then you've got guys like Cameron Hayward who are really good. And I think Jalen Carter's having a really good year. It's not necessarily showing up in the stats, but he is really a dominant force in the middle there. But yeah, I at the very least think he should be first team All-Pro. And if that's the case, he should probably at least be in the running for defensive player of the year because it doesn't feel like we have that singular dominant player on defense this year in the NFL. Like Bosa got hurt. He's not really having that kind of a year. Fred Warner's good, but I don't think that Niners team is good enough to support a defensive player of the year candidate.
He's had some, I guess, since he started out the year real hot, he's slowed down big time for the Niners.
Yeah, that too. TJ Watt is having a good year, but I don't think he's like running away with anything. Like I was looking at it and you've got guys like Nick Bonito possibly getting defensive player of the year credit because it's just not, you don't have that Myles Garrett guy just exploding all over in every single game. You don't have Aaron
Donald type.
Aaron Donald type. Yeah, that's a good one. I guess Christian Gonzalez is doing really well in New England, but that team is so bad. I don't know if they're going to even really look at him that much. It worked for Cortez Kennedy, but I don't think Christian Gonzalez is Cortez Kennedy. So
no,
I think, yeah. So I think he should be on the list. I don't know if he's going to win it. I'm going to have to really like dig into stuff here to get a feel for that, but it's not your typical, like, we're not going to have anybody with 20 sacks. We might not have anybody with 15 sacks. And usually when in doubt, the NFL says, go find the guy with 20 sacks and give him defensive player of the year. That's not really going to happen this year because nobody's going to have it.
Yeah, no, it's true. I went back and checked too on Kennedy's 14 sacks that year. He won defensive player of the year, 4 forced fumbles from Kennedy that season to get to that spot. But I just look at it like that as well. It's partly Leonard Williams and how well he's playing. And it's also partly by when you look at the lay of the land and the guys that are up there. He's at 7.5 sacks, 11.5 sacks is top in the year and that's always an edge guy, of course. But that means that it's not going to be a guy 18, 19 sacks at the end of the year and I don't think you're giving it to Xavier McKinney, the Green Bay safety either. I come back to going, boy, he's got a good chance as anyone if he can just kind of keep that production at the spot of where it is. And great to see from Leonard. Just reinforces all the more, Brendan, that was such a smart trade. And then on a lesson learned front on this, Brendan, because oftentimes when we look at trades, we'll go, well, there's too much capital given up. Yeah, you got the good player, but you gave up too much capital. I think this situation and the Dwayne Brown situation has kind of proven that there can be the situation where you do overpay, but come out the other side of it still saying plenty happy to make that deal. And that informs you into the future that if a deal like that comes along, let's say, I don't know, Brennan, like for maybe a left guard, that perhaps you'd be willing to do the same type of thing, understanding there has been a track record of success.
Yeah, I think it would be hard to criticize that trade now. I know that there are going to be some people who say we could have just waited for him in free agency and then signed him, but we'll never know if that was a possibility. If he isn't already here, does he want to come here? We'll never know, but a lot of the time it feels like probably not. A lot of the time the decision is driven partially by these players going, well, I'm already here. I already live here. I'm used to these teammates. So I guess I'll just stay here. So assuming that you couldn't have signed him out of free agency, then yeah, it's a great trade. It's Schneider, it seems like usually at the very least gets good players in these trades. Sometimes the context of the trade you can wonder about. Like, I think the Jimmy Graham trade was a good trade. I do. I still do. I just didn't use him right. I think the Sheldon Richardson trade was good. It's just we collapsed that year for other reasons and we couldn't justify keeping him.
Yeah.
So in terms of the player itself, I think the trades are usually quite good. It's just sometimes circumstances outside of just the capability of the player lead to bad things.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's a place where John's one of the strengths that he can lean on going forward, which is why I want him to utilize this, is because it has been pretty good when he's targeted these guys, and especially if it's for a position that maybe they haven't drafted necessarily as well. Again, like a guard position where you go, look, we don't do this well. Some other teams develop a guy. Let's go do it this way and get some certainty into the house and what we're bringing in here. And he's had some success here. So let's see if they use that this offseason, if that is a tool that he goes back to. But he has been pretty good. People want to get caught on that Jimmy Graham, Jamal, and maybe even a little bit of the Percy, but there are a lot of other trades around that have been very successful, and even ones that aren't the big swings like your Diggs or your Dunlaps that have been moved that are more smaller end deals that were also very successful.
Right. Yeah, Diggs was a big one.
Oh, yeah. No, that was a fifth-round pick you got him for there. That was a huge get on that for getting a Pro Bowl player basically you brought in. Boy, how he helped out the defense that year from where they were and what he brought in. John does a good job. Usually sometimes find that glue guy too midseason that you just the right, Ernest Jones this year, just the right guy you needed at the right time for the defense to help things out in a major way. Well, speaking of this defense was obviously we had Julian Love. Witherspoon played some really good games in addition to Leonard Williams in this one. The defense as a whole, I thought, was kind of flying around, and some of the PFF scores I didn't think were totally fair on this one on the defensive side. This was a weird PFF graded game to me all the way down the line a bit. But anybody else defensively that stood out to you of notable on this one?
Not that it was like his best game or anything, but Kobe Bryant really looks comfortable at safety, and I think we've seen enough now to where we can go, okay, this is our safety next year. Because Rayshawn, he's probably a cap casualty anyway. Even if he was playing better, he'd probably be gone.
Yeah.
So I think we can kind of feel pretty confident about what's going on there. Honestly, like I actually did a live stream of this game, so I was reacting to stuff, and in the stream, me and a lot of the people in the chat were being very critical of Josh Joby, but honestly, when you looked at the numbers at the end of the game, it was not that bad. It was like 8 to 10 targets and 52 yards, which is really not bad for your third corner, especially for a guy we didn't even know existed until this season started, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think from my perspective, part of it is too, Brendan. You sound like you're in the same lane on this, where you think about Kobe Bryant and Job and Ernest Jones. And you go, if you retain these guys in, you feel good about them going forward. But what you really like about it is that we feel like certainly you win the division. I know we were a few weeks ago in maybe a potential different state and trying to understand what this team is. But if you round out getting close to winning the division or winning the division, I think you have cemented enough at that point to say we can be a contender in 2025. That's something that's realistic. And if you have Kobe Bryant and you've got Ernest Jones and Job, and you're bringing those guys in, and with Job and Brian, it's not even an extensions needed. You just tender them, I believe. Maybe Job's a free agent, but I think you can just tender him on the 4th year.
I think that's right.
All you got to do is sign Ernest Jones, and then Brendan, all we're sitting at really looking at, we might release a Draymond and Uchenna, so maybe we got to go find another edge somewhere as well. But you can find those guys in free agency, especially a depth guy, right, behind Hall and Boye Mafe. So you can find those guys relatively cheap. They won't have a lot of holes defensively at that point. I know we maybe talked a little bit about this, but that's just reinforcing again with Kobe and his emergence that you come into this offseason with really only at that point potentially one real true need and a quasi need for a backup rotational edge guy if you move off the guy who you may not move off of.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about nose tackle, I will say, but that's easy to
That's what I
find.
said. That's what I said. Nose tackle.
Oh, okay, you did say okay. I missed
Yeah,
that.
yeah. That's the one.
Yeah,
That's the
that
one
would
you've got to
be
address.
yeah. And yeah, I think I pretty much agree with that. Like even, maybe you need a backup safety. That should be easy to find too. This is a good safety class, by the way. Should be able to find some guys for sure. But yeah, the defense has really come together, and it's come together in a way that I wasn't expecting. I didn't think that we'd be good at middle linebacker before the season started. I thought for sure we'd be flipping everything over at the end of the year, but now it looks like if we keep Jones, and maybe we don't, I'm aware of the fact that there's a lot of money that needs to be spent this offseason, but you're good for years if that's the case, because Knight's going to be on that rookie deal for the next few years too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to completely fall in love with a player based on not even half a season, but Knight is way ahead of where I thought he'd be. So I'm happy to ride that for 2025 until he gives me a reason to not ride him anymore.
Yeah, me as well. I have no problem going forward. He's shown enough here to be, and he's been solidly graded. In addition to being good to the eye test, and what you're seeing on the field is that it matches up where that goes. It's not been perfect, but it's been good and plenty to build off of there. And I keep thinking with Jones that I don't think he's going to be pushing up into that upper crust market of where some of these uber high paid inside linebackers have been paid recently, where he'll find more of that just below mark, and it's more of the fourth 39 something or something like that, more than it is a pure 4 and 54 kind of deal, right? Or 4 and 70
Yeah,
kind of deal.
I mean the inside linebacker market's weird. Is the thing. Like it's like you've got three guys at the top, and then you just fall off a cliff, and then there are like three more guys, and then you fall off the cliff again. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're not at the top, you're making mid-level money. So it wouldn't shock me if he ends up getting something more like 13 million a year rather than the 20 million a year that guys like Roquan got.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's in the same kind of place, right around where probably the Patrick Queen deal was from last year is about what I would expect him to probably get. And I'm okay paying that a mark at that point for what he brings and how he's helped really steady the ship, I think, defensively for you in the middle of your defense since he's arrived. So
Mhm.
I'm completely good with him making that move. And I know he wasn't great to come out of this game, but I thought he again played a pretty good game in this game again. And boy, what an addition to get that midseason. Well, let's turn over here to the offensive side, Brendan, and let's look at what has got a little bit more of some ups and downs. As it seems like the offense is getting a little bit slightly weakened here as we go along through the year, or at least the word I keep using is regressing a little bit. As you look at them in their health standpoint, got your skill position players. You have Walker, you got Charbonnet, Gino's out there slinging the rock. Your line has Lucas back in the fold and playing pretty good football. And yet, Brendan, this offense just can't seem to find any kind of consistent footing.
Yeah, and it's pretty clear why for the most part, I think. I think we all kind of understand that interior offensive line is still just a big problem.
Yeah.
And everything kind of seems to stem from that. But I look at that game and I see the same kind of thing that I've seen all year, which is it feels like these defenses know what's coming based on formation and personnel. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think on our final drive, there was one play where we ran a pitch to Ken Walker, and Quincy Williams is just coming up like a cruise missile because he knows exactly what's coming, knows exactly where the ball's going. And Ken Walker goes down for like a 7-yard loss. And I think that's a microcosm of everything that I'm seeing from this team, where there is not enough conflict in terms of what they're going to run based on how they line up. Like you watch our play action, linebackers barely react anymore. And I was reading some stuff from, I think it was like Matty F was talking about this, Griff was talking about this. We never run the ball out of certain formations. So when we're in that formation and we do play action, it's gotten to the point where opposing defenses are just like, we know you're not going to run it. Stop trying to waste everyone's time tricking people.
Mm.
And, we're running out of time to establish conflict here. We need to start actually running the ball out of these formations so that teams have to honor it at least a little bit. We have to start finding ways to do different things out of certain formations so that pre-snap, these defenses are not just able to read exactly what's coming. I feel like that was constantly what happened in this game. So that was
Mm.
one thing. The other thing is, I think on a more basic level, we were in max protect a lot of that game. We did a lot of max protect, and it worked. Gino had time in this game. But then you look at like the all 22 tape, or you even look at the camera angle from behind the quarterback, and you've got 3 receivers trying to run routes against 7 Jets in coverage, 2 of them being Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. And it's not working at all. So a couple different things there, but those were my main takeaways.
Yeah, I think that they certainly are not able to run their offense the way they want to run it with the spread formations, which is you're sending as many guys out into running routes as humanly possible. And if you have to start protecting against your pass protection issues, then you're not running your offense. That doesn't have anything to do, of course, with not running out of from underneath shotgun, other than, again, it's just not inherently part of what you do with the spread system in what you're going to, that's just the adoption, air raid. How much on air raid in college are they under center? Probably very infrequently. Why are they under center right now running play action? Because they're effective at it and they're finding good plays out of the play action. But like you say, it doesn't necessarily trick up the defense into thinking you're actually going to run it, but you're still finding effectiveness throwing out of that when you go to it. And so I do keep coming back around. I know this is something you want to talk about, so it's as good a time anyway to get into it. But that's where, from my standpoint, I think some people are very hard on Grubb on this, and that Grubb's got some adjustment that's just waiting there to be had right now, and he's being frustratingly, just deciding he's not going to do it, even though it's readily made there. There's an answer right there. Grubb, you can go get it. I tend to find in myself that I don't think that that's the case. That he's sitting there with an advantage that he's just being stubborn about and not picking it up. But let's get where you're at on it. Is that where you feel that he's at, that there's this thing for him to do that he can do, and he's just, because he wants to be spread guy, and I don't want to run out of under center stuff, that he's just not doing it?
Yeah, I'm a little down on Grubb right now, I will admit. I mean, for most of this year, I've been pretty fine with Grubb. I think there were some really good games early in the season. Of course, there were some positive signs for sure. And I'm not starting a campaign to get Grubb fired or anything like that. But if I don't see something better the rest of the way, I am probably going to lean that way this offseason, I will admit. And the reason why I say that, sorry. The reason why I say that is because I don't think he's doing a very good job getting the most out of this situation. Honestly, if you want to be real, if you want to be completely honest about it, Waldron was doing a significantly better job last year, I think. And he had a really bad offensive line too. It wasn't this bad, but it was close. So to me, I remember I made a video about Shane Waldron a few weeks ago after he got fired by the Bears, just talking about that a little bit. And I actually said, I thought Waldron was fine when he was here. I don't know why all the Seahawks fans hate him. And of course, every comment I get is talking about how terrible Waldron was and how he's the worst offensive coordinator ever. And I just look at this and I'm like, well, Grubb is producing worse results right now. He really is. We are last in the league, literally last in the league in DVOA since week 7. Bottom, 32nd. EPA, we're near the bottom. Points is actually pretty close to the bottom as well. The only reason why our points are a little propped up is because our defense has been scoring. Like, we've actually had a couple of defensive touchdowns here that have helped set things up. The only stat that the Seahawks offense is good at right now, ironically, is actually red zone touchdown percentage. We're like 12th. Everything else is bad. And again, I think the offensive line is really bad, and that's obviously a big limiting factor. But I also look at the fact that we're not doing enough. Like it's that conflict stuff I talk about. Teams know what we're running because we only do certain things out of certain formations. And to me, the main thing that has really saved us these last several weeks has been the fact that JSN has just suddenly become this guy who's really hard to cover. Like, he's found this other gear to where he's just getting open in situations where most players wouldn't. So I'm a little down on Grubb. And again, I was good with the hire. I thought it was a good idea. But here's the other thing. And the other reason why I say I'm kind of ready to move off of Grubb this upcoming offseason unless things get better. There's going to be a lot of really, really good candidates for the OC job this offseason because of all these coaches that are likely to get fired. Like, I'll just give you an example. If you could go into 2025 and your OC could be Ryan Grubb, second year, yeah, maybe he gets better. But what if your other choice is Kevin Stefanski? What if your other choice is Mike McDaniel? What if your other choice is Frank Reich? What if your other choice is Doug Peterson? Or, you've got all these guys who are likely going to be available. Tanner Engstrand from Detroit is probably going to shake free because Ben Johnson's probably out of there.
He's probably the OC that takes over for Ben.
Yeah, he might just take over the OC job in Detroit, true. But what if he decides to go somewhere else? That's always a possibility. Even somebody like a Zach Taylor is probably going to get let go in Cincinnati. Even Mike McCarthy, like these guys are all overqualified to be offensive coordinators. So I'm like, in a normal offseason, yeah, I'd probably want to run it back with Grubb for one more year, but this may not be a typical offseason. There might be some really, really choice cuts of meat available to you.
Well, I definitely find myself a bit on a different lane on this, Brendan. Now, look, Stefanski certainly would be an upgrade and a guy that we'll see if he is available or if he would be a coaching candidate if he got kicked loose by Cleveland. I think that'd be a guy that would be on a lot of people's potential for hiring, where they look at that situation and say, you weren't given a fair shake there with Cleveland. You weren't given an opportunity to really find success there, especially being an offensive coach who's really never given a quarterback. The other guys, Doug Peterson, McCarthy, he's not going to be an OC at this point. I wouldn't want McCarthy anyway over Grubb at this point as an OC. I don't think of any of those their names that would be stuff that I would really jump onto. Zach Taylor, I don't want necessarily to go back to trying the Rams offense. We tried an acolyte already underneath with a McVay, and they're not McVay. And you grab a guy under McVay doesn't mean that they're brilliant. In McDaniel's case, I don't want to dial back into the Shanahan offense. That's not where I want to go, is from the spread offense back to Shanahan. Now we have to recalibrate and group to get the guys that are going to fit to his scheme. Not to mention, I think his star has dimmed just a little bit here in this past year. So,
what about okay, one more name, Daboll.
Dable's a potential option. I put him more closer to Stefanski potentially there as a guy that would be interesting. So I'm open to that as being a guy that would come in. And I may very well land on the same place you land with it, but I do think that there's a lot of adjustments there that are going on with. Are you really saying right now that you would take Waldron over Grubb here if you could, in right now in this moment? The guy that didn't target the middle of the field at the 30-second rate, the guy with no pre-snap motion, the guy that Chicago could not get out of town fast enough.
Well, what I'm telling you is that Waldron did a better job last year than Grubb is doing this year, I think. I would say, I don't know if I would rather have him, but he did. I do think he did better last year than Grubb is doing this year, because the offensive line's worse, but it's close. Last year's offensive line was really bad. And to me, the results have been worse. So remember, at the same time, Grubb also has a much better version of JSN, right?
Well, potentially. Yeah, it's he's improved. I don't know if a much better version is necessarily where I would go to. I think that's a little bit of overstating it. He's better. He's locking it in for sure, but it wasn't bad last year necessarily. Did they utilize him the utmost? No. I just think Waldron's an awful offensive coordinator. I think Grubb's kind of finding himself, and he's a first-time OC at the NFL level, and there's a lot of more reason to believe that there's some upside there versus Waldron not really ever showing much of anything there. As far as I go, especially because Grubb's at least shown an ability to have some adjustments, whereas Waldron was not about any kind of adjustments. I also think that the 2 and the 3 tight end sets are more inherently a part of Waldron, and we've had to go to those 2 tight end sets at times this year. Again, a lot of the stuff you see them doing schematically is to sort of clean up what's getting dirtied up. And so it's not then allowing Grubb to really run his scheme. He's having to overcome deficiencies and rejigger basically his scheme with, like, for instance, those 2 tight end sets, or with the max pass protect situations to accommodate this, versus Waldron, who could just go to the 2 tight ends or the 3 tight end sets, which he loved to live in. And he can kind of get by on that a little bit in the way that I don't think Grubb did, but we don't want to be in 2 and 3 tight end sets by and large. That's not where the NFL offensively is going, unless you got 3 insane tight ends. So I think from my perspective, I find him being a lot more limited in his ability to run what his scheme is supposed to be, versus Waldron, who had maybe a little bit more of the personnel to at least get by with the scheme. But I do think Grubb is, by and large, a much better OC than Waldron.
He probably will be. But again, normally the main reason why I say this is because I do wonder if they're going to be who are you replacing Grubb with if you replace Grubb, right? That's to me more interesting than just the question of do you want to keep Grubb or not? Because you can't tell me that Grubb's doing well enough to where we just have to completely accept that he's here no matter what. Like, we have to at least consider it because of the way this year's gone.
Well, no,
So
I mean, everything's an evaluation point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't think we're considering moving off of Mike McDonald. Like, he's clearly done more than enough.
No, assistant coaches.
That's our guy.
Assistant coaches. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I look at it and I go, could you get Stefanski? Could you get Brian Daboll? Could you get pull Frank Reich out of retirement, who's my guy? That would be my guy. If we get Frank Reich, I'm like, I'm buying Super Bowl tickets. I love that guy. I think he's a genius. And again, there are probably some sleeper candidates I'm not even thinking about as well. Some guys in college. I don't really know if I want to go that route right now. But the point I'm trying to make is that there may be an opportunity to upgrade this offseason. And obviously the big one would be Stefanski. Like, if you could get Stefanski as your OC, I think you fall all over yourself trying to make that happen, because he's one of the best head coaches in the league. And if Cleveland wouldn't be firing him so much as setting him free, right? Because, it's just so hopeless there because of the Watson contract. And if he would actually take an OC job for a year to try to, stabilize his career and then go get a head coach next year, I would love to be a part of that. But you're just going to have to wait and see what is available to you in the offseason, I think.
Is there any concern, though, that then changing an OC, you're sort of resetting the clock on the cohesion of the offense and having to reset verbiage and all that other stuff? And you might very well be then going into 2025 trying to work out your kinks on the offense while the defense is a well-oiled machine, and you have a team capable of contending, but might find itself with the right offensive coordinator, but caught in between. For instance, you go to Stefanski, he wants more 2 tight end sets. So now do you have to go put an onus upon getting the tight ends, and now we're back out of the spread and we're pivoting back over to 2 tight end sets, and now we've got to get that personnel in. And now what about the linemen? Is it now Stefanski's tended to have bigger linemen, not the mobile linemen? So now do we have to put the onus upon getting you see what I'm saying? Like, you could have hit that reset clock and push yourself out 2 years to getting to the spot where the offense is really now at a point of humming, and miss out on a potential 2025 where you could compete.
Yeah, and again, it's also going to come down to what I think about Grubb in 5 games. Like, this is how I feel right now. If he does better over these next 5 games, I might reconsider. But there's definitely game theory here, right? Like, everything you just said is absolutely true. It still might be better than a second year of Grubb, depending on how I feel about Grubb in 5 games. So yeah. I'm gonna keep an open mind here. I'm definitely going to be open to the possibility of running it back with Grubb, and I'm not against that. I'm not. I just wonder if something better is going to present itself. And if it does, I don't want to refuse to consider it because I have Grubb. I don't want to play I don't need a Mercedes because I have a Miata game.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair outlook on it. And it's where I've come to on this. I'm not an often guy, Brendan, that appeals to authority or is not going to want to say, well, here's where I stand exactly on this one, and that's it. But this is one where I do appeal a little bit to McDonald on this, where it's in his best interest to have the right offensive-minded coach. He's got a clear view of the situation to understand how much Grubb was impelled by this offensive line and what he sort of has inherited here on that front. And so whatever decision he ends up going with, I'll be completely good with, because I'll know that he's got the information and the view of this in the way that even us on this don't quite have in that same way. So if he does run it back with Grubb, even though I'm open to the other possibility too on this, like you say, of upgrading it, that you understand why he'd make that choice on the other side too. You understand either way he would go.
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to have as much information as the actual people in the building. That we just never will. It is what it is. It's impossible. Like, how many hours a week do you think Mike McDonald works?
Oh, I'm sure well over 100. Yeah.
Yeah. And how much of that do we get to see? Like 3 hours on game day.
No, it's true. Yeah. It's true.
So,
I think there are some times where there's stuff where they may have more information where I'll still be more willing to throw the line into the water and say, here's where I stand on this, whatever they're doing. And this is one, though, I think I specifically find myself really leaning into that spot, saying, what have they gone through in that building there offensively, and what Grubb's had to do? And McDonald is aware of what he did. And McDonald's defense has not been restricted in the same way. And that, well, I don't have the personnel to run my corners for man covers like I want. I have my safeties in the backside. When you had your linebackers, you flipped them out, everything was good. So it's not quite an equivalency to the defensive side of the ball for where that one was at, in my mind, at least on this, Brendan. But I'll fall back on that. And wherever Mike really wants to fall with this, and I'll be fine with it. And I'd probably lean to bringing it back just because I feel like that line has weighed in very heavily on him being able to run his scheme and his system.
Yeah, and if we do that, I'm going to be fine with it too. And again, I wouldn't be thinking along these lines if I didn't think we could get a better person this offseason. But I suspect there's going to be some good options out there. And I don't want to close myself off to that.
Nope. You never want to not look at any potential, be it players or coaches, that can help you get better and improve. You don't want to shut down any of those potential corridors just because. So keep an open mind for sure on this one, and we'll see where it goes. And hopefully they can finish at their strongest at the end of the year, Brendan, and maybe with this line getting some cohesion. Saatoa Lamea didn't play too bad. I think he got bumped pretty bad by the PFF grades, but I thought to my eyes that he held up pretty well in this game overall. And maybe that guy can start to be an answer for us in there at right guard too.
Yeah, it's the penalties. PFF always kills you if you get penalties. So it's just that. And I thought the holding penalty was weak anyway. So to me, I look at that grade and I'm like, okay, I understand why you got there, but I don't think it's reflective of what he actually did. You know?
No, he looked a little more steady to me in there than what we've had from Bradford and Haynes for different reasons between those two guys.
Right. So, that'd be a really nice carrot to take into the offseason if we're suddenly like, oh, right guard's good after all. We just, it was the third guy. We fell to the third guy, but the third guy's it. Because, I always say this, it's not hard to find a right guard. It should not be that hard. Right guards are everywhere.
No, especially since all we need is get to even just league average performance and we'd be flying. That would be like dominance for us at the position and equivalency. So if you just get it to that spot of things and, be good, man. It's like if Lucas can maintain his health at right tackle, it's one less thing you knock off the list that you have to then go address this offseason, which lets you, just lock in on these certain positions that you looked to upgrade and then upgrade in a major way because you have less extra stuff across the board and more to just pinpoint on this, pinpoint on this, pinpoint on this, and hit it majorly. I think very well could be the way they go with this if this can finish off the way it looks like it has a potential to.
Yeah. What did you think of Olu in this game? I thought he got blown up a couple of times. It wasn't terrible, but I wonder if maybe he's starting the shines off the apple a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's had a couple of performances in the last 2 weeks that haven't been the best. He started out really good in that first game that he came out there. I thought he was very impressive. I'm not sure if it's all that together smart, putting Quinnen Williams on an undersized Oluwatimi and expecting he's going to hold up. I think that's setting him up for failure a little bit in that moment. But I think we're seeing right now a little bit of why he was where he was on this team and why he's not necessarily been able to ascend. Looks like from an overall grade standpoint, he's right around to where Connor was at. But I think a lot of that's buoyed up by that first game performance because it's also obviously sample size. So I would like to see him play better coming out of this game. I thought, he was a little disappointing with him, but if you're going to have a game wrecking defensive tackle on the inside kind of guy, that's going to probably be a bit of a long day at the office for our line where it's at, both from guards and center positions, because it just has been.
Yeah. Also, I don't know how the noise cancellation is on this mic. Can you guys hear my dog right here?
No.
Can you guys hear? Okay, good.
No, you're good.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's
also working. Can we break a little bit of news on the stream here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I got a little bit of breaking news here. Uchenna Nosu has been activated from injured reserve officially as of just about 20 minutes ago.
Let's go. Let's go. Nosu activated. I love to see it.
So
helpful.
Does that mean he plays? Does that mean he plays?
Oh, yeah.
Probably then. All right.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting him to play. That's me finding a $20 bill in my pocket. I didn't know it was there. All right.
Yeah, he's I think he's a guy they've been real careful with. It's a little bit like a la the Lucas situation, but different, where he's had multiple injuries. And I think they just said, put him on IR, get him through the full end of it. Let's have him down for the stretch run. And we'll see how healthy he is, but I would expect him to be probably, certainly from the injury that he suffered in the preseason, he's had plenty of time to get up over that one. And hopefully he can come out there and provide the Uchenna impact that he's been when he's been on the field for us, because it does so much for this defense, widening out the rotation, especially this late in the year, Brendan, where, with Hall and Mafe, you've used up a lot of the gas in that engine. And I think some of their depression of their performance over the back half of the year, where they have not been quite as impactful as they were through that first stretch of games, kind of maybe comes from the fact you haven't been able to lock in those rotations like you thought you were going to be able to do with Uchenna coming into the season with those three guys.
Right. I agree. It would also be really nice if he looks really good the rest of the way and you felt like that was a guy you could keep in 2025, because that makes the edge room so much more solid going into next season. Whereas if you come out of this year feeling like Nwosu's cooked and you have to move off of him, then you might have to invest a lot of resources into getting another edge rusher. And, it's one more thing you have to worry about. So it would be great if he could come out of this 5-game stretch and we're like, yeah, we're bringing that guy back next year for sure.
Yeah, to your point, you save, I think, $8 or $9 million by moving off of him. But if you're going to even sign the veteran rusher on the market who's just coming in to be a pass rusher for you, that's going to cost you $4 or $5 million on a 1-year deal. So all that you then basically cut out the door, you spend back on the other side of it, and you probably don't get as good a player as Uchenna for the guy you bring in, probably a one-trick pony kind of guy. So it would probably be in the best interest if he can come back and be solid for you, because you move on him, you're going to need to fill the hole, and you don't have necessarily another development guy in the third role behind them who's ready to emerge in that way. But that's a huge news for us. It's going to really be helpful to a defense that's rounding into shape to bring a guy like in that, because as we saw over and over, when you got defenses that you can keep fresh, those are the defenses that can dominate it throughout the course of the game and keep the pedal down on that way. Offenses can't just wear him out. So huge addition, bringing Uchenna back. Hopefully he's healthy. That's the key with him. Can he be healthy, Brendan? But if he is, right, he's a good player, both as a run defender and as a pass rusher.
Yeah, and it might be the difference this offseason between feeling like you have to spend your first-round pick on an edge rusher and having to spend like a fourth-round pick on an edge rusher. Or maybe instead of spending your first-round pick on an edge rusher, you can just say, let's go get Clowney, and he'll be our fourth rusher.
Yeah,
something like that. Clowney's probably at the point in his career where being a fourth rusher is about right, I think.
I would love to see that move, Brendan, by the way. I mean, if you are moving off of Uchenna to bring a Clowney in for a guy that's been in this defense and he provides that certain set role in this defense to be that real, it was a pivot point for the Ravens. They just align Clowney out like they do with Hall a little bit, that extra wide thing. And then they just go, Clowney just go downhill into the middle of the defensive line every time and just blow guys up. Like you're just a bowling ball knocking guys over. And it wasn't, sexy. It wasn't intricate, Brendan, but it worked really well for the Ravens. And Clowney is really uniquely suited in that way with his power and his length to do that in a way other guys just can't do it. It's a specific skill set.
Yeah. What if you could go like Nwosu and Clowney on early downs and then Mafe and Hall on passing downs? Like that's the dream, right?
Yeah, you'd probably have a hard time selling Clowney though on that, because the fourth guy on that's going to be very limited on his snap count. He's going to come out of the game like 20 snaps when it's said and done, because you're only going to have 65 snaps a game for your edge times 2, or 60 snaps a game for the edge times 2. That's 120 snaps basically off the edge in a game. Do you have enough there, or not 120? Sorry, it's just 60 snaps a game. So do you have enough there to really chop that up between 4 guys to make them all feel like they're getting enough run there? I think with 3 guys you can, but 4 it's a little harder.
A bigger guy. So maybe he slides inside a little bit and plays like 4-eye a little bit. And also he's getting older and he really hasn't been that good this year. Maybe being that fourth guy is actually about where he is in his career now. I don't know.
Potentially could be. Could be. I think he would be an interesting guy though to target if you can. And he's only got 1 more year remaining on that, I think, Panther deal. So if you make a deal for them for a 5th round pick, you probably could pull him over too. Where you have them on real cheap 1 year, final year of the deal, especially if you're in a contending go for it mode to just try to top the tank off a bit with that edge rush. Like you say, I mean, it may be big greedy, but maybe you're able to pull it off.
You'll get more out of him than Roy Robertson Harris for sure.
Oh, yes. Yes, you will. Seth K. Aloha. Thank you for the $5 donation, Seth. I really appreciate you for that. If the offense could find a way to score at least at the 1 with multiple attempts and special teams could stop trying to lose us the game, that'd be nice. Yeah, 7 attempts inside the 4-yard line in this game. Another one of those moments where the game you just knew was drunk, Brendan, and that was tough. And I think to your criticism on Grubb with the play calling down there and some of those calls down there on the side of that, I mean, we got to quit calling the fade ball to DK Metcalf at the goal line. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I've seen that throw to him, I think, 30 times over the last 3 years. I don't think that we've completed, but maybe one of those throws, maybe one of them. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. On the 3rd and goal from the half-yard line after the penalty, I think it was offsides at the 1, so it was half-yard line. Gino comes up to the line, and the way the Jets are aligned in front of him, it's the easiest QB sneak in the world. And I'm just looking at that and going, okay, if Gino just snaps it right now and QB sneaks it, he's going to get like 3 yards deep into the end zone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did we have this many snaps from the 1-yard line? Because remember, there was the PI in the end zone. So we had 4 chances from the 1 or half-yard line, and you don't even try one QB sneak. I understand that it's not a good matchup for us. We've got Oluwatimi against Quinnen Williams, but I remember looking at the overhead on that snap, and I'm like, that would be the easiest QB sneak in the world if you just snapped it right now. Come on.
It was on the left, right? If you're from behind him, it was the gap on the left to the center that you're thinking of. Like, there was a wide gap there. I remember that as well. And yeah, I mean, if I'm Grubb, I'd tell Gino, if you're at a half-yard line, you see that thing, just snap it and jump through. Don't think about it, Yeah. Especially because nothing else is working.
Yeah,
oh man,
I understand why this team doesn't want a QB sneak because their interior line is that bad. But that play, it was free. The Jets were literally giving you the touchdown for free.
Yeah, and also, can we say this is another one of these that, like, it's like the special teams adjustment you make here, Brendan? And with how good the defense is playing, I feel like the team would be smart to start to take the points. McDonald's tried to be aggressive this year and lean on this offense like it can just go get that conversion, go get that touchdown. And if you don't have to do it, if you can take the points and still lean back on the defense, I say you got to make that adjustment from a McDonald's standpoint on this, because the offense just hasn't been consistent enough to make those kind of calls.
It is. It would be really hard to sell not going for it from the half-yard line, I will admit. Like, teams do not do that anymore. So I get it. And I guess looking at that, the thing was, if we kicked the field goal, we still would have been down. That's probably part of it.
But a field goal gets you the win if you're within a field goal, though. So you take the field goal, but then you're within a field goal. Not only gets you the tie, but gets you the win after that. And that's, to me, you're right. It's not. This isn't the way the NFL is at right now. So it's not to say this is, standard issue procedure is that you do go for it there. And then if the Jets get it, they're offensively on the half-yard line, and your chances of blah, 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 blah. But this is that thing like the special teams unit too, where it's like most teams are going to receive the ball at the 2-3 yard line. Hey, let's try to return it out. That's an advantageous situation for us to get a good return. Whereas with us, I think we've got to read the law here. And that is that we're not 5, 6, 7 games into this thing. We're 3/4 of the season into this, Brendan, and you are what you are at this point. And to a very, I think, detailed level. And in what you are, I think, is one team that isn't in those situations played it good when you're in that 4th down and goal situation to go, or trying to go for it in general. It's just, you're not good like that. If there are points there, I think you take the points. And again, it's about also reading the fact that you have your defense that's given up 12 points over the past 3 weeks. That's shut down that Jets offense for 8 straight drives to finish off that game. And that you as a coach have got to read that in the moment and go, okay, I know what I'd ideally like to do coming into this game, and then I know what I've got to do as I'm now living through this game. And I'd like to see with McDonald make more of a read of that. Are you in the same place, or say, hey, no, go for it? This is the new analytic age.
I mean, I'd rather kick the field goal than run a shotgun play where you only use half the field.
I hate that sprint option left, don't you? Like, you're sprinting left. So quarterbacks, when they're rolling left in this throw rolling to your left, that throw sucks. Now, when you're rolling to your right and you throw it, it's more of a natural throwing motion with the momentum of where you're going. You're trying to throw when you're throwing right, you're throwing against where your momentum's taking you, your body. And so it's very hard to get anything on it. And you can see Gino, he's not comfortable. We had the freaking safety in week 1 when they tried to run that. Remember that same play, week 1?
Yeah.
From the end zone, you run the sprint option left thing. It was just as bad. Like, when has that been successful this year at all, Brendan? Is there one play we've run sprint option left that's worked at all this season? Because I can't think of one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best answer there is go for it and then just QB sneak it. Even if you don't get it, the Jets get the ball at the half-yard line.
Right. It's not a sack, because that's what happened with Jets. Is you get the sack on the final 4th down play. Now they're at the 15, 17 yard line. You didn't even hold them onto the 1 yard line.
Yeah. Just QB sneak it on 3rd and goal, QB sneak it on 4th and goal. If you don't get it, then, the football gods hate you. And it's not that big a deal because the Jets get the ball at the half-yard line.
Yeah. No, I'm okay with that too. That's another way I would have been perfectly fine with that. Just not to get the lack of conversion, no points, and you're giving them actually an okay field position.
I couldn't believe. I mean, we were in shotgun from the half-yard line. What the heck?
Well, the sprint option. It's just sprint option, moving to his left. He's not comfortable throwing to his left. He's not as accurate. He can't put as much on the ball. You're limiting down his reads because you're in a condensed place on the field anyway. So half the field's completely gone to you to the right. You're only going to be locking on the left. You've got a condensed field for defenders who can really close that down. I just don't know where the point is in Grubb's mind on that, where he goes, this is a successful play, and how he sees it in his head. How do you see that playing out that way differently? I don't quite get it myself.
Yeah, not much I can say about that one, but it's just That was definitely a moment where you have to wonder what the heck Grubb is doing. I think that has motivated the Grubb discussion more than anything. And I mean, I'm not arguing against that. I look at that and I go, I can't really defend that from Grubb. I've defended Grubb for some things. I can't defend him for that. And I think that's why the conversation's moved the way that it has. That sequence was so bad that some people are wondering. Like maybe you can get away with that in college when you have Michael Penix at quarterback and you have the best receivers in the country.
And wide splits. And then you can run all the way to that wide split of that hash mark and you actually got some room to work with. But I do think, as much as I am a supporting Grubb, I do think that there is definitely room for criticism here. And that 7-play sequence and some sequences in this game where you do, I think it's valid to say, is he doing everything he can to overcome this? He's impelled by this thing that's causing his offense to not be able to do what it wants to do, but it's not the end all be all excuse either, where there is other factors here, where there's some other stuff he could be doing, I think, at times. Lack of creativity, lack of misdirection, the predictability of the offense. I mean, those things do sit at your feet, and it's just how far you want to take it on that criticism with him. But I think it is completely valid, Brendan.
Right. So, and yeah, the special teams we already kind of talked about, but yeah, I don't think. Do you think Harbaugh makes it out of this season? At this point, I don't.
I don't know. You mentioned the point earlier, which I think is a valid point, which is that you weren't a particularly good special teams coach in college. And with Grubb, you put together a prolific offense for back-to-back years in college. You helped to take the UW program to the heights as far as they've been since 1992. To me, that's a lot of a different pull than grabbing a guy like Harbaugh, especially with the last name that factors into this. I'm not going to say Nepo, Brendan, but I mean, the fact that does factor into this a little bit to me as well. You go, I've got some suspicions on this one. I do. And with Larry Izzo, he took you mentioned what was the cars that you just mentioned before? Ferrari to, what was it? The Pinto or whatever?
Miata.
Yeah, he inherited the Ferrari. He's turned it into a Miata. Because Larry Izzo had this group humming last year. When was the last time we had any return touchdown against the group, or multiple big time returns in one game on its own?
We had the one against the Niners, right? But previously in that game, Chenault had already fumbled. So it's like the touchdown made up for the fumble almost.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I think at this point, I don't understand how you can. Multiple blocks, the Giants block in the game that you had with that at the end of the game, where they had obviously seen something on tape and then they exploited it in that moment. That's right to your special teams coach. That lands on him. That's only on him, really. He's got to have his team prepared and ready for that. And so he looks in over his head to me. And I'd like to go see what Larry Izzo's doing out there right now.
Yeah, go hang out with your brother, man. Or dad, or whatever. Just
go back. Go to Baltimore. He's allowed a landing spot in San Diego, quality control coach, or go. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. How does the Harbaugh family tree work? Is he a brother or a son?
Son.
Okay. Right.
And then he's son of John, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's John. Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $5 donation. How much can you put on Grubb, Huff, John Schneider regarding fault? What's the percentage splits? If it were me, Huff should be let go. Grubb, better than Waldron.
Boy, this is hard. This is where it's hard to untangle things.
Yeah, it's a good question, Kevin. But it is, to Brendan's point, just a bit tough to untangle. I think that the fact that the offensive line's not been good prior to Huff arriving, now has Huff taken it further than the prior guy did? Maybe not. But then it comes back to me on this, the talent level. What is the talent level? What should this offensive line be performing at, ideally speaking? And because that's where you got to think, you got to kind of start with Huff on this a little bit, even those other two guys probably gain more of the blame. And I don't know if I can put a whole lot of this on Huff, Brendan. Again, maybe he's not a great offensive line coach, but he's walked in a year where he's not had his starter in Lucas for more than half of a season. George Fant, the insurance policy, was also out. Stone Forsythe is not a right tackle. You've got old-ass Laken Tomlinson out there at left guard. I don't know who was going to get anything out of that guy. Connor Williams retires mid-season. Oluwatimi's not been necessarily really good enough. Bradford's not developed. Christian Haynes looks like a miss in the third round. So when we start with Huff, at least on this, it's kind of hard for me to put as much on him with that.
Well, I mean, there's another angle to this, right? Like Charles Cross has gone from a capable starter to borderline Pro Bowler this year. So there is some development of the one really good player that you have, right?
Right. The one guy that was out there and rolling, to your point, the one guy was actually, you could week in and week out, all right, let's guide you on this, let's guide you on that.
Yeah. And I know some Seahawks fans are a little down on Cross right now, but it's really hard to pass block for a one-dimensional offense.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It would. I mean, think about how much better he'd be doing if we were balanced and defenses couldn't just tee off constantly.
Agreed. Yeah.
So to me, he's still playing at a roughly Pro Bowl level.
Yeah, and like the bottom line is he's a top 10 rated tackle in the sport by PFF. That's not by happenstance or accident. And yeah, I've seen him knocked on long. I think too, Brendan, when you're a team that's one of the league leaders in passing attempts and you're bad across the board in offensive line play at times and struggling offensively, then that's just also more attempts for that guy to then build up more pressures. Probably why you got to go look at more of the pressure rate with some of these guys and making an assessment rather than looking at that thing that can be a volume stat versus another quarterback who doesn't have the kind of a passing attempts, and his line might look better because of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that Grubb and Huff are connected at the hip. If one goes, the other goes. If one stays, the other stays.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're basically connected here. So I don't think there's a scenario where you let Huff go and keep Grubb.
So what's your percentage on, let's call it the Grubb Huff versus JS, on percentage of blame for why this offense isn't doing better?
Okay, the offense in general.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, is it John Schneider didn't get the line built up, or is it Grubb not scheming this up?
I'd probably go something like 60% JS, 30% Grubb, 10% Huff. I don't know. I really don't feel like I don't know if it feels right to put anything on Huff. Maybe you could say he's got nothing out of Christian Haynes, but Christian Haynes might just be a guy who's destined to play center or left guard. Yeah. And we're not going to determine that after one season anyway. I'm disappointed that Bradford hasn't really developed that much, but Bradford might just be, a dud. It's possible. He's a 4th-round pick.
Yep.
And I mean, we were down to a 4th string right tackle for a good chunk of this season. Like, nobody's really going to survive that. Sorry.
No, they're not. And I would go more 80-20 to me, because John Schneider, in the case of this offensive line, this isn't a one-year issue for me, Kevin. This is something that he's had multiple years to recognize as a deficiency in his general managing game. And he continually comes around to just not being willing to do what it takes to get the line up to snuff on every given offseason. And it bit him again in the butt here this offseason again this season. And hopefully he has learned his lesson, but it's hard for me to put that on Grubb when this has been a problem prior to Grubb arriving. And I think if you give an offensive coach an offensive line that's going to be 25 and into the depths in run blocking and pass protection, I almost can tell you that on that basis alone, that's an offense that whatever talent you got skill position player wise and running back wise and even a quarterback is going to get limited in what it can get it pull off, because that's just such a limiting factor to have a line that's that so thoroughly crappy. Thank you, though.
Yeah.
Appreciate you for the donation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Brother Abe, 509, coming in with a very kind $20 don. No, I think this is on your end on that side of it. So thank you for that, Brother Abe. He says the full episode of Leonard Williams Mic'd Up airs Thursday on Seahawks Central. Thoughts? Heavy breathing.
Should be fun. I usually don't watch these things. I usually don't watch Mic'd Up, so I'm gonna have to make a point to watch it this time, I guess.
Yeah.
Should be fun.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I'll try to check him out as I can there, Brother Abe. But Leonard is a good mic'd up. I'm sure there'll be a lot of good jokes about him running up the field and being out of breath and all that good stuff. But they do good content with Seahawks Central, all that. They do a good job catching that stuff on the field. And you sometimes can get some good little nuggets in there too as well. So thanks for letting the folks know out there. Keep an eye out Thursday night. Leonard Williams mic'd up. Get the notifications.
I'm down for it.
Thank you, though. Appreciate the $20 donation, Brother Abe.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Abe. Appreciate it.
Let's spin this a little bit forward, Brendan, on into this Arizona Cardinal matchup that we have coming up. And it's one that, folks, we're going to have a bit of a tough time, I think, today on doing a lot of expansive breakdowns on this. We're going to, I think, be more specific in this breakdown because we just looked at this team 2 weeks ago end to end, and we're not looking to, return back over territory with you guys that we just went down and you guys are fully well aware of with this team. So maybe a way of going about this, Brendan, in the way to attack this is from an Arizona Cardinals standpoint, what do they do adjustment wise against this? Off defensively, they don't need to do maybe much, but we were able to put the clamps down on their offense. I've got some certain answers on this myself, but I'd like to see where you're at on it. On what do you think Arizona tries to do to counter what they did to them defensively?
Versus 2 weeks ago when we completely shut this down.
2 weeks ago, yeah. or are they maybe not built to that? They've just got to try to be who they are and run the same thing out. So I don't want to preload the question and where maybe it's just there isn't anything they can do. They've got to stay in that same role.
I mean, they really haven't been that good offensively this season. They've been okay. They've been decent. They've been workable. So there's probably not a ton they can do. That's a team that has one really good tight end. They've got one really good receiver, who's a rookie, by the way. Let's not pretend like he's Justin Jefferson. He's good. And that's it. Then they got like Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. I think they still have him or something.
Yeah.
Greg Dortch or Ben Dortch or something.
It's Greg Dortch. Ben Dortch.
Yeah. And, they just have a lack of talent out there compared to some of these other teams. And you look at like that Jets game, one thing that the Jets were able to do is they were able to win a lot of their matchups with their receivers against our defensive backs. They just dropped passes. Like they had Woolen beat on a couple of plays, and then Adams or Wilson would drop the pass. They had Joby for what would have been basically a game-ending touchdown to I think Garrett Wilson, and Rodgers just completely missed. And then the next play he threw the pick six.
Yeah.
But the Jets have pretty maybe not elite, but really good receiver talent that the Cardinals just don't have. So if I had to say anything, I'd say maybe they try to stick with the run a little bit more because they kind of gave up on it last time. And the game was never out of hand, but they were so ineffective running the ball. They kind of just quickly went to we got to abandon the run thing maybe before they needed to. That's the only thing I can really think of, because I don't think they have the talent to really wing it around the way they might want to in situations like that. They just don't have the receivers for it.
No, they really don't. And I agree. I think they may have gotten a little bit away from the run on that one. It's happened to them last week in the Viking game too, where I think they had a little more success running the ball and got a little bit more into the pass happy mode of things. And if you can get them in that mode again, that'd be great from a Hawks defense. I think you've got them at that point if you can force them into that. But it does start again in this game with stopping the run and stopping Connor. I don't think they're going to do a lot. You're going to get a lot of that gap stuff where it's linemen pulling in space and them throwing a lot of big bodies at you coming downhill. And can you hold up and maintain that gap integrity? Like even last week against the Jets, we our Seahawks do a pretty good job overall and holding up the run. I think they average maybe 4 yards a carry on the day. Not too bad. So the run defense has maintained some strength on that, Brendan. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think that there's probably a little more onus on this, trying to control the clock, control the ball, and really test the Seahawks defense to see if they can truly hold up in stopping the run. But I think as far as the Hawks perspective on this, it becomes the same prescription as before, where you want to turn them one-dimensional, make Kyler start throwing you. If Kyler starts to throw it, like last week against the Vikings, where you had too many attempts on that arm, gets up around 41 attempts for the game, you're going to probably have a couple of interception moments at that point from Kyler. He's going to probably throw the ball up a couple times for you if you can force him into that corner.
Right. And this week you might have to, in order to do that, you might need to score a little more, right?
Yeah.
Because if they fall down by 14, 17 points, then they're going to probably be forced to panic and throw the ball a lot. And we didn't do that last time. We had a couple chances couldn't quite open the floodgates. This time we need those floodgates to open. Like the thing that sticks with me about that Arizona game, other than how good the defense played, was the points we left on the board. We had the ball in field goal range a couple of times and then took a sack, and in one case turned the ball over to take those points off the board. If we just kick field goals and make them on those drives, that game's probably over before the fourth quarter even starts.
Agreed. Yeah, that's the part where with McDonald and Gino, I really want them operating through the rest of this year, a little bit of understanding that, hey, the defense playing where they're playing. There may be games we need to call upon the offense more, but until you see the defense showing you proof of that in the game, take those points when the opportunity is there to take those, especially early in the game, first, second, third quarter. If you've got to get aggressive, but otherwise build into the understanding here that you don't have to necessarily be lighting the scoreboard up, Brendan, in order to come away with the win. And I struggle to find this Cardinal offense that's going to go put up 24, 27 points on you this game. If you can just scratch those extra points out, get yourself up to 24 points, it's probably a win in this one, where this Cardinal offense is, and to your point of how limited the Cardinal offense is on their side of it.
Right. And the other thing that stands out about that game is going into that game, I don't know if this is the case now, but I think the Cardinals were like 30th in the league in pressuring opposing quarterbacks. They got a lot of pressure on Gino, mostly through stacked boxes. I felt like they did a lot of that, putting like 6 guys at the line of scrimmage and then either sending an overload blitz or just mixing and matching who they send and who they drop back. So I'd prepare for that. I'd expect more of that, because that's probably, with no Ojulari and no Gardek, that's the only way they can really get pressure.
Truly is. We saw last week with the Jets, they threw a lot of that stack box front at us, and this has been a common item that teams have gone to defensively against us here for quite a bit of time, even going back to last year in the Ravens game, where this kind of started out with the stack boxes and then just trying to confuse the offensive line and the protections out of it. And so if you can do that again in this game, if you can draw us into max pass protect, because we think a blitz is coming, now we have less receivers running routes, this can cause us issues with being effective down the field. And like you said, they did a good job of creating that pressure in that last game by the variety of ways, and they will take risks. This is a cover zero kind of team. They love running those kind of blitzes, and they understand that they have to run those kind of blitzes because of the deficiencies of what they have as far as pass rushers on the edge. It does bite them in the butt, and that's where a big part of the game offensively comes down to Gino. When they do go cover zero, can you punish them? Can you push that ball up the field? Can you hit that big play then, because you're able to recognize that blitz? And there have been some times where Gino's been able to be really good about catching that this year. There's been times where he's been caught off guard by it. And so that's a big key offensively, beyond maybe how you even run the ball, because I think the run game is going to be what it is here, Brendan. I don't think we can really expect this run game. Well, this is the week it's going to come alive. It's probably going to be a struggle in just about every game as we go forward through this year. Maybe they did find some consistent runs last week with Sato out there, Brendan. I thought we had a good number of 5, 6, 7 good quality runs in the game, where we've had some of these games where we have one quality run and then a whole bunch of just crap. So maybe there's there's
quality runs. The quality runs got canceled out by all the negative runs by the end of the game. But you're right. It was a little bit better. I think that's worth noting. And it doesn't show up in the numbers the way you would want it to. That's very true.
Yeah. And maybe there's some building on that, but I think that it is going to be how you throw the ball and sling the rock around the field, and then how you deal with that pass rush. And last week, Brendan, the sequence at the end of the game with the Cardinals and the Vikings are driving down. The Cardinals run a blitz, stymies them. Cardinals come back, run another blitz, stymies them. I think they're on a 4th and 7 play, and they went back to that well a 3rd time, and Darnold saw it, and he was able to hit the guy for the touchdown, because he ended up with Jefferson with one-on-one, because they were bringing the coverage zero blitz down. And so that's what you got to be in that same place from Gino's perspective, is if they're going to go that hard on it, it's a bit like in baseball, Brendan, where they say, you can't throw the 3 change-ups in a row. Because now he's not sitting on the fastball, he's just sitting on the changeup the whole way. And it's the same kind of situation with that Cardinal defense. If they go to it too much, and you can really make them pay the price. But you got to be able to recognize when it's coming from Gino's perspective. And a lot of that's going to be, I think, going back to probably getting them up to the line of scrimmage a little bit earlier on at times, like they did a couple weeks ago with Arizona, where you can give Gino that time to recognize it coming.
Right. I like it. So I still feel overall pretty good about the game. I don't feel too differently about this one than I did the last week. I don't even feel like home field advantage matters that much. If anything,
take over that stadium.
Yeah, like the dome might be better for Gino, right? Being in a dome versus being in open air might be better for Gino.
There's been some stats that tend to show that he tends to be better in those kind of situations like that. So, to your point, and we do good taking the stadium over. I think our team's going to be hungry, knowing what's at stake here, Brendan, and that you get this win, and you've got this division, and maybe not a stranglehold, but you got your hand around its throat, right? You ain't maybe squeezing down, but you at least got the hand around the throat on it.
I mean, at that point, it's almost impossible for Arizona to win the division, because we'd have a 2-game lead. We'd have the tiebreaker. There's 4 games left. It would be, and by the way, Arizona's remaining schedule is cake. So they will probably do very well, but you've basically got a 3-game lead. And the Niners, they've got their own problems over there. So you're down to the Rams. That's really all you have to think about the rest of the way if you win this game.
That's right. And so it starts one more. We got the Niners locked up last week. Get the Cardinals potentially lopped off this week, and you're down to just kind of that one. And not to get greedy with it, Brendan, but the Rams can fall to Buffalo this week, and they've got one more loss at that point. If they have one more loss before your game at the end of the season, and you win this game, and you take care of business essentially with like a Chicago team alone, let's just say you lose the Viking and Packer game at home, but you take care of the Bears game on the road, you might get to that final game of the season at that point. If that Rams team has dropped 2 games between now and that game, where that game doesn't, it's like a bye, where you're essentially able to say, we got a home playoff game and let's rest everybody else up in the final week of the season, and we're going to have a home game next week.
I really don't want week 18 to be for everything in LA. You know that they're going to get everything.
I don't either. Yeah.
They're going to get.
That's why I'm getting greedy about this. That's why I'm like doing this math.
Yeah. Let me check something here. What is the Rams' remaining schedule? Because you're right. They have the Bills, Niners. We'll see what state the Niners are in. Like, they're obviously not that good, but it depends on who they have. And then the Jets, they might be playing a Jordan Travis by then, honestly.
Totally. No,
the Cardinals blew that Rams team out already once this year. Like, don't count them out on taking care of the Rams in December 29th they play them. Okay. So that could absolutely happen.
Yeah. It's in play, especially because I think this week against Buffalo, that's probably a game they drop. So that's a almost guaranteed loss. Just not guaranteed, but I just think there's a good likelihood of that. And then you're in that place. So hopefully it can shift that way. We've got to take care of business here this week with it against this Cardinal team, Brendan. But you know what you got to do against this team. You know where they're weak. It's not intricate. This is not one of those matchups where it's, I think, as much a chess match. There's some chess matches with the cover zero blitzes that they're going to want to run, and then how you defend Kyler. We didn't talk a little bit about it, but we did such a great job in that first Cardinal game of being so purposeful with our pass rush and in the containment of Kyler, yet still getting pass rush, which is the real key with him, on especially forcing him up into the pocket versus letting him get out of the edges of the pocket and bail away and extend plays in that way, because he does not want to climb it. He doesn't want to go up into the pocket. That's not where he feels good about what's going on.
Yeah, he's got, Leonard Williams right in front of him, who's like 8 inches taller than him and has those giant arms. Like, you got no chance if you're Kyler.
No, you can't throw over the top of that monster. You best just crumble into a ball and hope he doesn't hurt you at that point is basically the best you can hope for.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to point out is I feel like when the Jets blitzed in this game on Sunday when we played them, we actually did a good job beating the blitz. So if the Cardinals try that again, I kind of feel like maybe we're a little better equipped to handle it this time.
And we were, to your point on that as well, they did a good job of not just, because the Jets aren't a blitzing team. They want the front four. They come off that Niners Seahawk old school model of the front four gets it done. But they did a lot of stacking boxes early in that game to set those blitzes up for later, where it was a lot of just dropping out, four would come, but they bring all those guys up, and they kept giving us every time they knew we were passing, hey, here's a look. And so for us to be able to catch it when it did come and to not get caught off guard was huge, especially for a guy like Gino, who needed to play an absolutely clean game in that last game against the Jets, Brendan. If he had one turnover, I think we lose that game, and you had to play that clean, and he did. And that's one of the reasons you're able to come out of that.
Yeah. All the turnovers we could afford were covered by the special teams. So yeah, you're right.
They took up all of our house money, man. They were like, you go in the casino with a buddy and you got $100. You're like, here, give me 40. He comes back and takes another 40. You're like, buddy, I'm over here making miracles happen with this 20. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah. And there were some incredible throws in that Jets game by Gino, by the way, like some of the ones to JSN and like quadruple coverage, like insane stuff. And then he missed his feint at the goal line a few plays later. So I'm not saying it was perfect, but some of the stuff he's doing, the degree of difficulty is off the charts.
He comes back around, and we'll be doing a show at some point on this, Brendan, because I think we are of alignment on this for more than just one simple reason of being just pro Gino guys. There's a lot that goes into both of our outlooks on this quarterback position, and it's one we've given a lot of thought to and discussion to, but just between the two of us on this one. But we're going to come out at the end of the year, I think, on this one, landing on Gino in the long term. Some of it depends on what the contract details are going to be of this. I think, not to speak for you on this, but it's because he makes those kind of throws every week, and it's throws that not every guy in this sport can make. In fact, very few can make these kind of throws like he's making. And that's in at times the face of a deluge of pressure. That's in the face of a lack of a running game. It's in the face of an offensive coordinator still trying to figure out and find his way as a first-time OC in this professional sport.
Yeah, that's still very much where I fall. And honestly, the way things are breaking, I almost feel like if it's not Gino, you're punting on 2025 and just kind of reloading. I
Yeah.
don't know what the alternative option is that isn't just surrendering. I really don't.
Agreed. Yeah, I've looked at it very thoroughly as well, and there's just no other, there's no feasible option. I will say, I went back after our show last week, Brendan, and relooked at the Trevor Lawrence thing.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we should do it, but I relooked at those numbers because they didn't look right to me when I looked at them at first. That team buried everything into guaranteed money and bonus money beyond the first 2 years of the deal.
I did see that. Yeah, I did. It is doable. Do you still want to do it now that he has severe brain damage? Like, I think things have changed a little bit.
Now that he's done the fencing move on the field, that's such a
Yeah.
brutal term for that. The fencing move, like
Yeah.
it's like chills down your spine when you now hear that reference, because you just go, you almost can see the brain getting, and I don't know. It's probably a conversation for us more into the off season of when we get there with it. But John's perspective, if he's looking at this team, and one thing you and I have talked about on this show alone, of if this thing fits to form, especially if a couple things really round, Satoa locks in, Kobe locks in, Job's good enough, Uchenna comes in and he's slawed over, Ernest Jones on a contract extension. You got all these things that you've sort of taken care of on the team at that point, and you can get a little bit more, like I said earlier on this, Brendan, you can get real specific on what you're addressing and then address it in a major way. Maybe that's left guard, maybe that's a center, but maybe that is as well you taking that big swing at the quarterback for a guy like that. So I don't know, man, but there is. When we first looked at it, I didn't think there was any way you could make that happen with that deal. But if you give up the right draft capital for it and they're willing to move him, there is a potential we do see Lawrence move this offseason. And maybe not even for Seattle, a team like San Francisco, for instance, that will be willing to give up all that draft capital up to do it and throw basically the biggest or one of the biggest king's ransoms at the Jaguars to make it happen. So I don't know. I don't know if it will go down, but interesting relooking at that deal, how they set that structure up, Brendan, because they set the land, they set the land there to be able to pull this off.
Yeah, and wasn't he one of the guys who who set it up so 30% of the contract would be in Bitcoin? I think he might have been one of those guys who did that. Smart guy.
Sounds right. Smart guy. Yeah. Hell, Okung's looking hella smart for doing that back in the day. I wonder if do you think Okung's cashed in his Bitcoin? Remember that contract he signed?
Yeah.
He's had to have cashed it in by now, right?
Maybe some of it, but it's going to 300,000 next year. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to go up as well on that one. So,
Yeah, so hold, people.
Hold. It's Braveheart. hold.
Yeah.
Hold.
Odell did that too, I think.
Oh, did he? That's smart money for these guys. If they did it, man, they caught it at the right time, probably around 50,000 or 30,000 or 40,000. So, Sonny from North, thank you for the $5 donation, Sonny. Do we build the O-line through the draft or trade? Our effort in free agency leaves us disappointed every year. Can we fix it fast enough to contend in 2025?
I don't think the money's going to be there to spend in free agency, right? Because we've got not a lot of money. We'll create money, but then we spend that money on stuff we already have. I don't think there's enough money to spend in free agency, and I don't think there's enough assets to build through trade. So I think it is mostly the draft. Maybe you could get involved for somebody like a Trey Smith, but it feels like you always get outbid by some crappy team with $100 million in cap space when you do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, do Trey Smith, Sonny, or Tevin Jenkins, are they going to pull a $20 million deal on the open market like Robert Hunt did last year for the Carolina Panthers? Because to Brennan's point, there's always that team that's going to just go to crazy town and overspend on you. I think we would have the money, Brendan, but I don't think we'd have the crazy town money if they want to take it to that mark where they're going to push you that $20 million a year. I don't think we're going to go that far. I think we can create a lot of money. I know you've done videos on this. I've gone back and looked at it as well, and I think that you can have the Gino contract done on a new extension in about $45 million a year. You can have the DK deal done on about $33.5 million a year. And on the first year cap hit on both of those two deals, you save $5 million a piece. You bend over the $8 million that you're rolling over from this year's cap into next year's cap. And then you create about $60 million with those straightforward cuts. The Fant brothers, Uchenna, Draymond, Tyler Lockett, you're at $80 million and you've signed DK Metcalf and Geno Smith. You're at $80 million and you signed Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. So your big keynote signings are taken care of in-house. I think you get a couple of those extensions done and still have some money left over to be able to go out there and be active on the market, but not crazy town. But I think that you would be smart, Sonny, to your question, and to do a trade or do a signing this year. This is the old Holmgren thing that he always used to say, the lesson learned. What's the lesson learned? Hey, when I walked into Seattle as a general manager, I went really old on defense and I really young on offense. How would I do it differently going in retrospect? Let's go old on offense. Let's go young on defense. So going out there and signing an offensive lineman in that way, who's ready-made, who can hit the ground running, who you don't have to draft, and let's hope, let's flip the coin. Let's wish on a falling star that he's going to be a good player. We know what we're getting in this guy. He's solidified. He's ready to go. A Tevin Jenkins, for instance, would fit to the mobile-based nature we run if we keep Grubb. So I really like the thought process here, Sonny, of either going into the free agency or doing a trade, because we've not done it in at least 7 or 8 years, at least as a trade. And we haven't done a free agent signing since Gallery. It's been 13, 14 years on that one that you've gotten a true valuable free agent out there that you've out there and signed and, who's legit. So I'd like to see them take that trek instead, Sonny, not just because you can get a much better upgrade, but because you're looking at this as a contending point in 2025. So get a guy that's ready-made to go rather than the guy you got to wait till 2027 to get the returns from him on.
Yeah, I'm just kind of worried that a team like the Bears is going to throw so much money at these guys you can't even compete,
It's certainly possible. And to your point on that, you're not sitting with the most cap space right now in this league, and that those big drivers of teams that can have the 100 million plus to spend can overspend in a significant way that you just can't compete with. And if it goes that place, then you got to be patient. I mean, you don't want to overspend on these. I'm willing to spend top market prices, but I'm not going to break the bank. That's where finding a trade can also be a smart one to me, Brendan, where now you're getting a guy that's a little bit more economical, but maybe you're just giving up more of the draft capital to get him. And if that's the offshoot trade, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm. So, I think you do mostly go through the draft.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it, Sonny. And so we're a little different on it, but we are in agreement on this one, Sonny, with me and Brendan, that we do want to see them take care of this in a significant way. If you're going to draft heavy. If that's the only way you're going to go. If you're going to do a free agency and draft, do that too heavy. But really hammer this thing so that it's not such a deficiency in 2025. It can't be the failing point again another year when it's so clear that this is so problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Dogzilla Monster with a $12 donation. Thank you, Dogzilla. He says Corbin is hyping some fantasy that we will suddenly be able to run the ball on Sunday. Go Hawks. He's just caught up in the wonder of Sa'atoa La'amea.
That's actually true. He really likes what he saw from him, and I think there's a little bit of something there. I do think that he has the strength to run block, where a guy like Christian Haynes doesn't. I just don't think we can overcome the inherent predictability in these play calls that, like I said, in that Jets game, we had several very successful carries in that game, but they got wiped out because of all the negative carries from these plays where it's like -3 yards, -4 yards, -7 yards. I don't think we can overcome that. But the I guess the upshot is you got a guy like Ken Walker who is liable to just go 80 yards to the house at any time. So that could maybe offset the average. But in terms of like a consistent 5 yards per play running game, no.
Yeah, I think that you are still in some limited spots as far as that goes, and there is a bit no way around that. And the Cardinals have gotten better as the years gone along, Dogzilla, on stopping the run, where it was a real problematic spot for them. I mean, that Detroit Lions game, they just kind of put it right down their throat that whole game, and they didn't score a lot of points, but they were able to control the clock, control the ball, and they beat the Cardinals at home by rolling that. So look, there is some susceptibility because the Cardinals are just not that good as far as run defense goes in general, but it has gotten better as the year went along. They played us really good at home a couple of weeks ago in that rain. I think maybe those conditions probably was preventing, because the Cardinals with 9 yards from Connor too weren't able to get much done. It seems like it sort of neutralized some of the running game on both teams in that contest. I think that there's more room here with them building off of those runs Brendan just talked about, Dogzilla, last week, where there were some good runs amidst all of the bad. There was more of the signs of life. I think you're going to find some more success in this game running the ball, but they're not going to go. It's not going to go bonkers. It's going to be like, okay, Walker got 80 yards, on 13 carries or something like that. And Charbonnet got, 5 carries and 35 yards or something. So it will be more effective, but it won't be what's going to cause you to carry the win, I don't think. I'd be very surprised to see them put up like 200 yards rushing suddenly out of nowhere.
By the way, low-key, Charbonnet, really nice game against the Jets, I thought.
I didn't know he had that spin move in his bag, man. I didn't know he had that. I've never seen him whoop out that spin move before. That was impressive. Yeah, it was a good game from him, and there were some good runs in there. There were some legit holes that you open up for those backs where they weren't. There's a lot of those runs too where they're still dealing with guys in the backfield and they're getting taken down the backfield, but there were some of those offshooted runs there where there was legit holes for those backs to get through and go actually get some damage done. So, and there was even plays where on watching Toes tape, Brendan, where you'd have him and Lucas nail a double team at the point of attack. He'd peel down, get to the linebacker. He'd seal the linebacker. And then somebody blew their block from off screen and the guy just completely neutralized the run play. But the front side of it was really good, where there was some good parts to how it looked. It's just that the one guy messed up on his job. That's the run game. It just takes one guy to really thoroughly mess his job up and the rest of the guys can be doing everything right. And it's toast.
Yeah. I mean, all it takes is one guy to ruin the play. That's definitely a true thing. So there's probably plays here where most of the guys are doing their job, but the one guy doesn't, and there it is.
There it is.
So I buy it.
Yeah. But go Hawks, Dogzilla. And hopefully we can run the ball. That would certainly take us a long way to winning this game this next Sunday if we can lock that part of our game in. Sam Bam, thank you for the $5 donation. Sam, Brandon, did you ever sleep after the Jets game? You posted an early video after streaming like 25 hours on Sunday. Yeah, Sundays are pretty intense for me. I start out at 1. We got the game till 4:30. I do a Bleacher Report after that for a half hour. Come back. We do about a 5 to 7 hour discussion till about 1. And then it takes me about another 5 or 6 hours to put together the video wrap up that I do. So I try to put a lot of time into that. It takes me a long period of time. I'm pretty tired at that point. So my Sundays are 6 in the morning. My days go usually 1 to 6 or 10 to 6 if we got a 10 a.m. game. So it gets kind of intense. But like Brendan will tell you on this too, Sam, we gotta hit it. Brendan's doing this on his end with the videos he pumps out and the content, making sure he's on it. And that, this time of year, you gotta maximize while the getting is good. And we have a lot of time in the off season where me and Brendan get to be just in sort of chill mode. We're doing videos and we're scouting and we're doing that stuff, but it's nowhere near as intense as it is during the year. You just gotta, during the year, make sure you're doing everything you can to maximize all those eyeballs. Right.
And, obviously for me, it doesn't take me as long to put together a video. Like you said, it takes you like 5 hours for that post-game video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I certainly don't do that. But, I mean, uploading 6 videos in a day probably takes you somewhere around that amount of time.
Yeah, so I get different tracks. Yeah, same place we end up at. Yeah,
and then we'll get to July, and then I'll be spending like maybe half an hour a day on videos because there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, especially once you get to that June, we saw it last year. Especially, it's everyone checks out. They're on summer vacation, and so you get your plenty of time to kick back then and relax and do all that stuff. But during season, man, Sam, it's an intense situation. That's for sure. It's an intense situation. Thank you, though, Sam. Appreciate you for that. Jordan, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, just don't let the Rams make the playoffs.
I've heard that I guess Stafford has some kind of leg injury that he's going to try to play through. So keep an eye on Stafford and see if maybe his performance dips a little bit here. And if so, I mean, I don't think the Rams can survive that. They depend on him pretty heavily.
Maybe not. He's always a guy that seems like he's always got something that he's dealing with every year somehow or another. He's a tough SOB as well with it. But yeah, I don't want to see him in the playoffs again, especially because I can just imagine Aaron Donald's going to come out to play the playoff game. He's been activated, just been waiting to see if they'd make it. Like, oh, let the Rams go get a Super Bowl this year. But they're still tough, man, Jordan. That defense is playing pretty good football. That line is at its most healthiest as they've been all year long. And they've got their true 5 starters out there rolling, and they're good. Kyron Williams is running well for them. The receivers are back off the IR, and they're back up to speed for the most part, I think. So, they're as dangerous as they've been at any point in time this year. And it may come down to that final game of the year. It may come down to we got to go in there and win in their house to get into the playoffs. It's certainly possible.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but if it happens, it happens. That's why I really want to find a way to win that Vikings game. I mean, the Packers, maybe we can kind of scratch that off a little bit because they're playing really well right now. But that Vikings team has been getting by the skin of their teeth for a while now. They are primed to finally lose a game here. And I hope we're the team that can actually punch it through.
Yeah, I think if you beat the Vikings, you beat the Chicago, and you beat this Cardinal team, I think you take the division at that point. I just feel
Yeah.
like that with the Rams and the way they played this year and their up and down nature, and I just think there's 2 losses left on their schedule, and at that point, you've got it to me.
Yeah, I'm scared of that Bears game though. It's probably going to be like 8 feet of snow you're trying to play in, and
It's
like
true. At least it's
50-mile-an-hour winds.
it's Thursday. Thursday
Yeah.
games on the road for on the road teams. I mean, you're right there. And they played teams really tough this year, even in the losses. So yeah, I shouldn't probably write that one down, but it also may depend on how much we're hungry to go get that win too. Where we know what's
Right.
at stake. Where we get that win and we know we have next week off. Those players can get hungry for those buys like that. If you can, it's like the coaches. They'll say, "We'll give you the Monday, Tuesday off if you guys get this win." That'll light a fire in itself a little bit. So maybe that can be a bit of a factor. But we got to take care of the Cardinals first. Got to get ourselves in that position and to handle business to set the stage for that to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, though, Jordan. Ben, thank you for the $5 donation, Ben. Number 10 is back. Let's freaking go. We beat them once. We'll do it again. Held them to 6 damn points. Sit down, little bro. Go Hawks. Hell yeah.
Yeah. This is a game where I feel like Nosu could actually make a difference. Like, I feel like I don't know if he can make a difference against the Packers because the Packers are playing really well right now. But this game, like, Nosu might actually be a tilting point. So I'm really happy he's back this week.
I am as well. This is a complete defender. This is a guy that was Brendan before he went down to these injuries, last year. And before that struck him, every single year of his career as a young player who entered this league had gotten better and better and better and better. And he had just been slowly like rising up in that way before these injuries kind of struck and hit him. So hopefully he can come back and continue to build upon that and be the guy that he was before the injuries. Is a huge boon to this defense, bringing that into the fray, especially with how good they've been playing. It's an extra body, get you fresh. You're deep into a 17-game season now. That Thursday night game coming up in a couple of weeks. If you can go, hey, Uchenna, we're going to run you out 40 snaps in this game. We're going to take Boye down to 20 to kind of give him a blow this week. Hey, that's how big is that? Well, you don't lose any of your performative level by making that kind of move down the road. So huge that he comes back. And hopefully we can keep him back down to that 6 points. And you're right. They're the little bro here. I do think, Ben, as we go into the next couple of years, I think you're going to see the Niners and Rams have to kind of reset this thing a little bit. And I do think that Cardinal team is going to be one into the future where it may be the two birds going toe-to-toe for the next at least 2 years here in this division if those teams have to kind of reset. Stafford retires after this year, Brendan. They're sitting on the $33 million of dead money on Darnold on next year's cap, and then you'd be sitting on about the equivalent of Stafford's money on the cap then next year too as well. And the Niners in their situation. But the Cardinals got $100 million to spend this offseason. Darius Robinson's just starting to play for them as their first-round pick. Ojulari's coming back next year for them. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be something to have to be dealt with. They're going to be tough.
Yeah, I guess the thing you'd be afraid of a little bit is Budda Baker just decline because he's on the wrong side of 30 now, I believe. So I wonder how much longer he can do what he does.
I wouldn't be surprised if they move off him this offseason, to be honest with you.
Oh,
Even
really?
though it looks like you'd give him a contract extension, I think that they may look at him with that they could sign him to extension too because he's been a good soldier. But remember, he did request a trade a couple of years ago from them, and they kind of kept him in because he was too early on his contract extension to move him. But maybe where they don't, because you're right, they have to make a decision on paying him. Do you want to pay a guy at 31? I know he's been the good soldier. Do you want to pay at that age? And especially when he's going to demand where it's the safety market. You don't want to pay those guys anyway, and you're going to have to pay him $15 million a year or something like that. 16, 17 a year. He's a great player, but hard to, from a Cardinal perspective, I think that's going to be kind of tough.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
I tend to agree.
Phoebe Moore Seahawks, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, did you see the video of Zach Charbonnet returning kicks? No McIntosh?
Yeah, I saw the Charbonnet returning kicks thing, which I'm going to be pretty much open to anything when it comes to returning kicks at this point. My favorite idea, though, would be to bring back Aesop Winston.
I thought you were going to say
that would be my favorite. No, that would be fun. I mean, that would be like a fun like sideshow. But in terms of like effective football, I would get Aesop Winston back on the team.
Somebody mentioned Ooga Boogie. What about Ooga Boogie?
Is he available?
Yeah.
I would do that. Yeah, that would be good too.
Godwin?
Yeah, the thing is, we still need somebody to return punts, and Godwin, Icky Bicky, has never returned punts. I think Aesop Winston has. And it's also more important we get a guy who can return punts, because the kickoffs usually you can just touch back. The punts you actually need to at least catch.
It's true. Or Lockett back there. That's another option too. Just put
Yeah.
Lockett back there and tell him to fair catch everything.
You can't tell me it's that hard to find somebody who can catch a punt. Like, I don't know why this is the hardest thing in the world.
I swear to God, I felt like in the 90s and the 2000s, they did it better. Like the guys were more like thinking back to Bobby Ingram back in the day when he used to be the punt returner for us and how smooth he was with it. And just the ball went up, you knew he was going to catch it. There was no muffin. There was none of that. Like he was going to grab it. But these guys, I keep coming back to Brendan. I think it's a work ethic issue. I don't think that they put the time on the jugs. I think they just don't put the time to go out there and you're going to catch 30 punts a day, 50 punts a day from the jugs machine every day. That's what you're going to do. Different conditions outside, in the wind, all that. Like get good at this one job you have on the team. That's your job. I don't want to do that. It's like a lot of work. It's real tiring. Like 50 punts. Like I'll just go do some weightlifting. No. Damn it.
Yeah. Did Leon Washington do punts and kicks or just kicks? I can't remember.
Punts and kicks.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and he was great at both. Like that wasn't even the early 2000s. That was the 2010s for the most part with Leon with us here.
And he had to develop it, getting into being a pro. I remember there was a mic'd up situation, him talking to when he was at the Jets and first learning how to do it. And the Jets guy was talking to him about how he's getting comfortable enough at running up on the ball to set up. It's like a fielder coming up to throw a ball in outfield in baseball, where you're going to make a play at the plate. You want to be moving up and make the catch and then the throw, as opposed to catching it flat footed and then trying to throw it out. And he was doing the same thing there with the Jets, where he hadn't learned it for college. He had just learned it in the pros. But that's where I come back to that work ethic thing. Like if you're putting the time in the jugs, like Leon probably was there with the Jets, you're going to get better with it. But if you don't, you're probably going to look unstable come game day, like you're, like a newborn horse that's trying to walk for the first time.
Yeah. What's Darren Sproles up to? Go get him. He can do it.
I'm just saying, they're sitting on their couch and, they're screaming at their television when they watch these situations going, I can catch that. For $300,000, I will catch the ball. The Real Cheese, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, Trevor Lawrence not only had a bad concussion, but he's getting shoulder surgery on his left arm. He has a history of bad injuries. That should factor in.
Who needs a left arm?
That part's true. Yeah, he's a right-handed quarterback. Just cut it off, man. We don't need it. Just take a little bit extra weight off of him. And no, I think it would not with Lawrence. I do like Lawrence. I still do trust that he can be still a pretty good quarterback in this. And he's not been necessarily as bad as sometimes people try to paint the picture of him being. It's not a good environment there in Jacksonville. I'm open to him as a possibility, but Real Cheese, it's one that you've got to turn through all that, especially if you're talking about making him one of the bigger trade. You're doing like a Deshaun Watson-like trade for him. You better be really sure on all that stuff. You better be very, very sure in vetting all of that. Because if he's got those injury issues where there's something chronic there's something that this is just who he is as a pro now, you can't make that trade if you're going to give up that kind of draft capital. So it's got to be a heavy factor into the decision.
Yeah, I'm a Trevor Lawrence fan, but I still don't know if I think that's better than just sticking with Gino for a few more years. Like, I would be pretty close on that, right? Because Lawrence could be your guy for the next 10 years. I understand that there's a little bit of a extra cost there because of it. But it's probably the best possibility that isn't Gino. Like before this season started, I think you were talking about maybe the Bills would be ready to trade Josh Allen or the Chargers would be ready to trade Justin Herbert after this season.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening though. I think those are both probably off the table. So in the absence of anything else, if you really, really want to move off of Gino, but you want to compete in 2025, I think Lawrence is basically the only play. Like I know that I think it was Rob Stanton was trying to say Sam Darnold, but I think Sam Darnold's just having that one fluke year, Case Keenum style, and you don't want to be buying high on that.
No, I think he's still limited in how he's limited, and that and I just don't buy into the Darnold. There's a reason that he's on his like fourth or fifth team here now. If he was really that guy, then he would have stuck somewhere before this point, in my opinion. I know that was a little bit of what Gino went through as well, but I just don't see it there with Darnold when I watch him play. He bothers me too much, and I think when pressure gets to him, like he just doesn't always handle it the best. Like we've seen at times Gino handle it, where it's like He really will make kind of the bad decision. He looks really uncomfortable when he starts having to deal with that stuff. And I don't think you can make the game that easy on a guy. He'll be a guy that'll be talked about though, Brendan, for Rob bringing up. He'll be a guy that people speak about because you'll probably be able to get him on that real low end kind of contract while still giving him a little bit of money, which may prove tantalizing from John on that side. But yeah, I think I agree with you on that. Trevor, you want to talk about your, a true grade A chance to get a guy. Some people have their downside on Trevor Lawrence, but still a very hyper talented guy we can all, I think, agree that the Jacksonville Jaguars, for whatever quarterback you put in that situation, is not the greatest of situations the past couple of years. And there aren't a lot of other alternatives, not in this draft. And you're probably not looking into next year being able to get up high enough in the draft, continuing where the team is at, to go get that guy either. So you're going to have to maybe find a creative way, if not Gino, on this one.
Yeah, trade for Will Levis.
That's right.
Make it happen.
Malik Willis.
The fan base would revolt if we. I would actually not hate the Will Levis thing. I know most of the fan base would revolt, but that's the guy who I think the Titans are the one team that in the composites I've looked at have a worse offensive line than the Seahawks. That's the guy who really needs some help. Yeah,
they went and got their quarterback. They didn't take care of the line first before getting him, and they put Will behind that. And you and I looked at Will a lot coming out of Kentucky, and we said, you're going to bring him onto an offense. The thing that you need to do that he didn't have in Kentucky is an offensive line. He's playing in the SEC against these insane opponents that are just able to rush the passer from every which way but loose. And you've got an awful offensive line that's causing him to make bad decisions, and it's compounding. And so now he's been put into the same kind of similar environment there with Tennessee. And it's not shocking then that he doesn't necessarily soar then in that environment. We could see that kind of coming, couldn't we?
Yeah. And even if he fails, you get great memes out of it. It's a win-win.
Oh, you do. The faces alone.
Yeah. The mayo in your coffee, the banana
bananas,
peel thing.
The whole banana.
That's worth a 5th round pick, right?
I'll throw a 5th to that. I'll throw a flyer on that one for a 5th. Oh yeah. I don't know. You never know. Tennessee might kind of re-up with him a little bit on that too. They run with him another year. We'll see what they do. They got the new coach though. New coaches tend to want their shiny new quarterbacks that they get to handpick, and maybe a Cam Ward location that he goes to. Maybe a potential destination for him there in the first round. Sam Bam, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, cool art in the background. I don't think he means you on that one. Maybe he does. Yeah. When will you build your dream studio? How can we help? So I'm going to be probably redoing a little bit of my backdrop here. I think I'm going to take down the middle point of the lights, and I might take down the flag, and I'm thinking about getting a neon light, custom neon light background, for the backside of that for me, Brendan. So I think that's where I'm going to go with that and just kind of adjust it. But at some point I'll do the dream studio, Sam. At some point I'll go hog wild, probably a couple years down the road once I got a little bit more ducats in tow. But yeah, definitely always thinking about doing some different things on the backside here.
Yeah. Like I do the green screen thing. So honestly, my dream studio is probably just a better green screen. I prefer it that way.
What you got to get for you is we got to get the full thing, and we got to get like all of the body into it. So we have like the whole backdrop where like you're sitting on, you even got it on the floor, I like that look on the floor one.
Yeah. Some people have the one that attaches to the back of the chair, and it's just like the butterfly wings or something.
I don't like that.
Yeah. I don't even have a physical green screen. I use a generated green screen, which is why it sometimes doesn't look great. But at some point I need it like an actual full green screen.
The ones they have I've got one here that's the smaller one, but the one they have on Amazon is the big long one that you can just pull right out. I would definitely recommend those. Those are really good, and they're real convenient too, because you can just bring them right down, close it up, and throw it under your bed if you need to, and they don't have to be up out in the open all the time. But the best is obviously the cloth one. That's what I had for a while, but you can't change cloth to this. You have to, once you go to it, you got to own it on the full backdrop where you put it end to end on your wall from top to bottom. But those work good too if you want to go big on it. But someday there, Sam, we're going to get it someday. I promise you on that one. Someday. Bit by bit. Thank you, though, Sam, too, for the double donation. Appreciate you for that, man. Slobby1 with the $2 donation says, would you be interested in Nate Davis? Probably not at this point. Nate Davis is the Chicago Bear guard that got released 2-3 weeks ago, but he carries a $4 million cap hit if you assign him. Or it was $4 million at the time. I guess it's probably like 3.5 now.
Well, if you're not good enough for the Chicago Bears, you probably aren't good enough for anybody, right?
That's the thing with that Slovey one is I think if Chicago's cut him with the help that they need there, and then that probably tells you that, there's some issues there. I heard there's some potential locker room stuff there, and he doesn't come necessarily cheap, where you'd like to probably roll that $8 million you currently have on the cap into next year's cap. And if you're going to go and sign a guy for $3.5 million for the remainder of the year, you want to kind of know what you're getting in with him. He does know the offense. He's going to come in blind. I think that's more of a move. Maybe you look potentially to in the offseason as a kind of take a bet minimum flyer on him maybe, or something like that. Not to be the answer, but to bring him into the mix. But no, not at this point. I think it's just too late in the season to bring him in.
Yeah. And is he a left guard or a right guard?
Right guard.
Yeah. Is he going to be significantly better than Lomia? And keep in mind, he's going to cost 10 times more than Lomia. I don't know if I buy it. Maybe he'll be better, but are we really going to spend 10x the money for 15% better? I don't think so.
No. And then does that 15% get pulled back because he doesn't know the offense and he's trying to learn on the fly and there's mental mistakes made because, that's what that check means. We're making, what is that adjustment? What's that play? Communicate with Lucas, trying to figure it out pre-snap with it. So would have made sense at the time to do it, to jump instantly, maybe a little bit, but I think that the team also knows that there's a good reason why Chicago's probably released him, because as Brendan just said on this Slovey one, they need line help. They don't want to put Caleb into more precarious situation, and it wasn't like they were saving a lot of money by making this move. It was one that just seemed to be, hey, this guy ain't working in this locker room. He ain't doing what we need him to do. Bye-bye. And you're probably not going to want to bring those kind of guys in when you're trying to establish a winning culture and everybody all in, buy-in kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, let's move into the prediction segment here, Brendan. And we've got our Hawks beating this Cardinal team 2 weeks ago, 16-6. We've got us now back on the road. I think we're 3-point-ish dogs in this game, 2.5 points, whatever, by Vegas. Where do you land as far as the outcome on this game and the final score goes?
Feels like you're going to get the best shot from both teams because they both need it. Like whoever loses this game probably just kind of feels like it's pretty much over. It won't be over, but it would be really hard to overcome. But I probably feel a little better about this game than I should. I feel good about this one. I like the matchup. I look at that first game and I feel like the defense can play at about that level again. And I feel like our offense is going to do a little bit better. I think, and I don't think the home field part matters very much at all. I'm not worried about playing in Arizona. I'm not worried about having to play in that stadium. If anything, it might help the offense a little bit, I think. Yeah. So I think this is going to be one of those sequels that is better than the original. I'm going to say it's a sequel it's not like Gladiator, It's
Star
not going to be like
2?
Gladiator. Yeah, it's going to be like that. It's going to be like The Dark Knight. It's going to be like, I don't know. There aren't that many, are there?
Godfather 2?
Maybe. Winter Soldier, Captain America, Winter Soldier.
There we go.
Okay.
There's a couple.
Not very many.
No,
not enough. Lord of the Rings, Two Towers is better than Fellowship. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I go with that. I go with that too.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with something like, I'm gonna say 23-10.
23-10. I'm going to do it 24-17. I think you get the win on this one. Maybe not comfortably. Maybe just it's another final drive at the end. But I do feel good about this one, where I feel like the vibes off the team is one where they're not, trying to overlook this team or not locked in. It feels like the team's getting locked in. It feels like it took a lot of this year, Brendan, and it's a feeling, but it does feel like the team is, the messaging and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish and what this is going to take to get us to where we're trying to get to go. The team seems to have gotten that buy-in on McDonald at this point in a way where we might have questioned it a little bit early on in the year. When that 5 of 6 losses, we might have been, it's not quite locking in. You don't have everybody towing that line right now. It feels a lot more like you have this team towing the line, and being this late in the season, being top of the division, knowing what's at stake to keep your toe on that line. I've got to feel like you're going to get their best effort this Sunday.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel probably a little better about this game than I should. I will be doing a live stream of it, by the way. This will be my second live stream of a regular season Seahawks game this year. So that'll be fun. It'll be the last one I do this season. But I don't know. I feel good about it. And I just like the matchup. I just think that Arizona can't really hurt us through the air the way they need to win this game because they don't have the receivers.
They don't. And I think we've got the cornerbacks that are well suited to be able to handle them, even though Marvin Harrison, they can give some cornerbacks problems in this league. I think when Woolen's on him, that's a tough matchup for Harrison to get free on. And Witherspoon in the slot on Dortch, no problem for him going in there. It leads Kyler to going, okay, I got to go look to Michael Wilson and that Joby matchup, which is probably a 50-50 for me to go to that one on that other side. And you have the tight end, and that's the one they leaned on last game a lot. So hopefully you can find some answers there. It's been kind of problematic for us throughout the year in dealing with tight ends overall. So I don't think that part's changing, but maybe it doesn't have to. I mean, maybe you can give up a 8-9 catch Trey McBride 80-yard day, but if you're shutting down the rest of the wide receivers and you're limiting the run game, who cares?
Yeah, I'm down for it, man. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling good.
Well, Slowby1 finishing us off with a $2 donation and a double donation from Slowby1 at the end of this. So thank you, Slowby1, for that double dono. Says, who do you want us to bring in or trade for on the offensive line?
I think it's a little too early to get into this conversation too much, but I really liked your Tevin Jenkins idea. We talked about that. I think Jacksonville has a guy that maybe you could get. I can never remember his name though.
Yeah, he's I know you're talking about. I got him somewhere here. Hold on. He's the left guard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know you never remember his name.
I know, I space out. Brandon Scherf, that's what you're meaning.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
I guess he's right guard.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that the ultimate need is going to be left guard.
Unless you're thinking Ezra for Cleveland. You think
Ezra just signed with Jackson? I think he just signed with Jacksonville, so you can't really get him. Okay, well, there aren't that many left guards out there, so I think we all know that it's hard to find a guy. But again, I'm just hoping we can find the solution in the draft. I think there are a couple of intriguing guys in this draft that you can get that you play at left guard, but that's a conversation more for the off season. But the Tevin Jenkins idea is nice.
Yeah, I've really gotten fascinated with that. You'd like in a spread system, Brendan, to find those guys that are tackle, former guard converts. I mean, those guys seem to be, look, Sato Lamea, tackle, guard converts, seems to be fitting this offense pretty good in that first week of play. Tevin Jenkins, tackle, I think, with the he played for the Cowboys and Oklahoma State, I think, in college, then transitions to left guard. So he's got that mobility, athleticism. He's big, he's mean, he's nasty. I think that he'd be a great fit. Trey Smith is a right guard in free agency for the Chiefs. Another guy who's a real possibility out there. Both these guys are going to cost top end prices, but those would be two guys that to me stand out. Slowby1 as guys that I would take definitely a very strong look at. I don't know about trades because some of that comes down to which teams are willing to move who, where. And as I've looked through the teams that have possible trade options that they can give you, there's not a lot of guys that stand out to me that I think will be available who I also then would want. There's guys that might be at the end of the road or you're paying a little bit extra for limited performance, but not necessarily on the surface of this, that splashy trade that jumps out to me of a guy that's, you can go grab in that way. But we'll be doing more of the look for the trade guys, I think, as we get in the off season where you have a better understanding of who will be available and which teams are looking to pivot into maybe more of a rebuild mode. So they'll be willing to offload those guys because that's what you need with that trade too, is teams don't want to give up good quality offensive linemen, Brendan. They're only going to be doing it if they're in that rebuild mode and they know that they're not close and, they don't want to spend that much.
Sometimes they don't.
Yeah, even then they don't. Even then they'll still it's not the worst thing to have a good offensive lineman in here we're a little bit overpaying for. Given to that standpoint. Great question though, Slowby1. Tevin Jenkins, man, that's the way. Sign Tevin Jenkins, walk into your draft with, go find a center and a right guard in the draft, maybe in addition. You got a good mix then at that point. Really center, right guard become the only major question marks, hopefully at that point, and roll that way. Roll that way. Just keep investing. Keep investing in that offensive line, Brendan. Just overtake it. Don't go up to that bare minimum line this offseason. That's all I'm asking, John. Walk it past that line. I think this is the bare minimum we need to do. Take it past that point. Take it past that point. Doesn't beyond the specificity of the players, just you're the same place, right?
A lot of teams do it.
Yeah, a lot of teams do it. And you're in the same place, right? Move it past that line.
Like the Saints do it, and they still have a bad offensive line. So, if you don't do that, how are you ever going to have a good offensive line?
Saints are also weird, though. They take that guy like Cesar Ruiz from Michigan. Yeah. Safest center prospect in the draft, right? I think I remember you saying the same thing. And weren't you at the same place? That was your number one center in that draft, right?
I think Ruiz was before we started doing this show together, actually. That was a long time ago.
It was a little ways away. But I I looked at Reeves as a pure center. They've moved him to guard as a pro. He's been all right as a guard. Neither you and I we did not like Trevor Penning.
Oh, yeah.
We were scared to death that the Hawks were going to make Trevor Penning the pick there. And he's a run blocker, but he's a miserable pass protector. Miserable as a pass protector. So they've also let some of the guys get older there on some of the positions, like in certain spots, trying to get the last couple out. But you're right. They've been one of the teams that has maybe made that investment that still hasn't had quite the return on it that they wanted to, see from it. Their approach is just a little weird for my taste.
Yeah, Cowboys invested a ton into their offensive line. And I mean, last year it was really good. This year it's been bad. So if you don't keep going and keep going and keep going, it falls apart on you.
That's where Tyler Smith they bring in. He's been helpful to them. But then another odd situation, Cooper Beebe. Neither you nor I said Cooper Beebe needs to be moved to center. Right. That was not what we said. I don't remember hearing you one time say, maybe he could have, but you want to put him at guard. He's a guy that played tackle. You want to move to guard at the pro level. They lose Tyrion Smith. Frederick goes out to retirement. Zach Martin's 34 years old. That tooth is very long, very long in that tooth. So
yeah, they're saying that he's going to retire at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean he's at the end, and so they have addressed the offensive line a little bit with it, but Cooper Beebe and Tyler Smith don't overcome those three almost Hall of Fame level players you had on that offensive line for so many of those years. You got to do more than that to get there, and that's that take it past the line, past the bare minimum line. And the Cowboys tried this a little bit again. Tyler Guyton didn't like Tyler a lot either, did you? I mean, just kind of.
I like him eventually. I don't like him right now. I think he'll be good.
Oh, he's raw. Yeah.
He's too tall too. That's also honestly a part of this.
Yeah. I thought he's real athletic, but he had a long way to go to get there. And you're moving BB into center. And that meant you're going to have to kick his rookie season on him learning the center position. Maybe he'll be good there eventually, but Cowboys have taken some strange directions on their line too, though they tend to be a team that at least invest, at least on the fourth one. But that's what we're asking for, more than specific players, Slobey one. Just put the investment in it. It can be trade, it can be free agency, it can be the draft, but take it past the bare minimum line. Make this thing, if you can, a strength of the team, and you watch this team take off if they take that approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. And the way the defense is shook out there this year, you don't need to invest a lot on that side of the ball. Like, you've got a lot of solutions in place, as it turns out.
You really do. You really do. So it should allow you to really just laser lock in on the spots that you do need to get improved on this team and really majorly improve them. Hopefully they take that approach, and hard not to see them take that approach, because you just don't have to deal with so many other items like you've had to in other past seasons. I don't think. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how they roll with it. Folks, do me this favor today. If you could, for me, hit that like button, whether you're watching on my side or on Brendan's side. If you're on Seahawks Brendan Nelson's side, please sub up to him, and also sub up here to the Hawks Nest on YouTube here. If you're on my side, please do sub up over there to Seahawks Brendan Nelson on his side, as we do these shows, of course, every week, and we will be doing them throughout the offseason in our coverage of free agency and the draft, and hopefully as our season winds down here to some beautiful returns and getting into the playoffs, and maybe even making some noise in the playoffs. Thank you for doing this today, Brendan. Appreciate you ever for jumping in here with the chopping it up. Some great discussion today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do it next week. Hopefully, when we do it next week, we have a really firm grip on this division.
That's right. We may not have it in a stranglehold, but we got our hand around the throat of this division with a win here against this Cardinal team.
Yeah, like Azeez Al-Shaair on Tom Brady.
Right, exactly. Or Azeez Al-Shaair on a sliding Trevor Lawrence. You know, either of those two are applicable here.
Right.
So let's apply. Well, thank you for doing this, man. Appreciate you guys all watching. Thank you to all of the donators, Samban, Slobey Wan, Real Cheese, Feed More Seahawks, Ben, Jordan. You guys are awesome. Brother Abe, Kevin Mullen, Dogzilla Monster, Seth Kalo, Kevin Mullen. You guys are awesome. Appreciate you guys for that support here on this channel, both me and Brendan. Back next week, hopefully with some very good news, but this is going to be a fun game this week, no matter what occurs on that side of it. Appreciate you guys. Back soon. Get this dub. But until next week, please don't you ever forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.